Out of the gates and ready to go. OutKick 360 underway. Thursday edition is here. Weekend just around the corner. We're going to help you get today. There. Let's
win today. We will win the day, Hutton. That is our claim. We're sticking to it. We're winning the day. We're almost through the week. Matty Ice is over there mocking us, saying we wouldn't even make it to Thursday. Yet here we are, fired up and ready to go.
On the road to a great show with Trey Wallace from OutKick.com. He'll be with us in 20 minutes talking all SEC headlines. Armando Salguero with us in hour number 2, plus Bobby Carpenter of SiriusXM, the college football radio analyst. He'll be with us in hour 3 today. Chad, we thought Brandon Miller would play. He, in fact, did play last night for Alabama against South Carolina, and then he has a season's best for him in a performance where he puts up 40, scores the game-winning basket in overtime, and the storyline builds from what was the last 24 to 48 hours. And there was talk and discussion going up to tip-off in Columbia, where Alabama was facing the worst team in the SEC, and South Carolina took them to overtime, and the ball was in the hands of Alabama's best player, the SEC's best player. Some say NCAA basketball's best player. Greg Byrne spoke before the game with Reese Davis about the fact that had this been someone else other than the star player, would he have or she been able to play in a game?
How do you react? What is your response to that there is preferential treatment given because of the season that's going on and because of the level of ability of the player and players involved?
Reese, I think that's a fair narrative that people can immediately go to. And what I have tried to think about this entire time is let's do what we think is right. Let's make sure we are honest. Let's make sure that we cooperate, that we support law enforcement and anybody else out there that needs to be supported through this. And, you can control what you can control. I can't control whether somebody immediately goes to that as their thought on this. What I felt is that Brandon needed to be treated fairly like any other student athlete should be. That's here at the University of Alabama. And that's what's been driving us through that, whether it was him or whether it was a student athlete on any other team.
Well, and so from there, he uses the word we a lot. Not Nate Oats, not Greg Byrne, who's speaking there, the AD, but we, the University of Alabama. And Pete Thamel asked him, okay, exactly what went into gathering the facts from the university standpoint?
Walk us through the university decision-making process for a decision like this. Obviously, it's not a unilateral decision by you. I imagine it touches a lot of people at the University of Alabama. Can you give us some insight into how the decision to play Brandon Miller was made?
So it was ongoing from the get-go when the incident happened. It was a conversation between myself, Nate Oats, conversation with myself and the president. We have legal counsel involved for the university. We have our different offices within the university that are at least aware of it, and so we had normal conversations like we do for other issues, and that information was shared collectively, and collectively we decided that Brandon was able to play.
Chad, he also said that they did not know, he claims at least Byrne didn't know, about the text message that was sent from Miles to Miller about bringing back the gun until it was out in court the other day.
It's all complete BS. The fact that Greg Byrne is saying it's a fair narrative, people that think that he got preferential treatment because he's great at basketball, tells you everything you need to know. That was the one bit of complete honesty I think we heard from Greg Byrne right there. If they didn't know about the text, that's a poor job by them doing their due diligence. Look, Tuscaloosa police are known across the region for being very cooperative with the University of Alabama. So I don't think that any information they could get about this case or get from Brandon Miller, again, if Brandon Miller is being completely cooperative with the police, which I have no reason to believe he's not, based on everything that's out there, wouldn't he tell his coaches that he got or his lawyer could tell him, he got a text about this when he showed up about bringing the piece, and that piece was used to murder someone? He could have told them that. They could have found out this information a number of different ways. So does that not change anything if you just found out about it? If you're Greg Byrne, they're going to do all of these little mental hurdles and clear them and use all these big words about collectively and we did this and we've done that and we're doing this like we would with any other student athlete. It's complete BS. If this was a bench player on the soccer team, or this was a reserve freshman or sophomore on the football team even, or someone on this basketball team that wasn't Brandon Miller, that guy or that girl is booted from the university and kicked off the team immediately. People are arrested in America all the time for having done less. And I'm not claiming he should be arrested. By the law, he shouldn't be. If he's telling the truth, absolutely he shouldn't be arrested for it. But let's not pretend that anyone is debating the fact that he transported the murder weapon to a murder. Whether knowingly doing it or not, he had it in his vehicle all night, he brought it to the gunman, and someone died that night because of it. Put that on anyone else that's not Brandon Miller level good, and they are removed from an athletic team. I'm not calling for the imprisonment of this young man. I'm not saying he should be arrested or charged, but he's going to face a civil suit at some point. That's going to happen. And at the least, you suspend him for a month, 4 or 5 games, do something. Alabama continues to do nothing, all in the name of winning. And that's all they're about.
And that's what they did last night. They put the ball in the hands of their best player, and he puts up 41 points. But he's facing, and he will continue to face, chants like this from South Carolina fans. There were fights breaking out in the stands last night between an Alabama fan and South Carolina fan. I mean, we're just getting started on this. The chants, by the way, were lock him up. But Chad, he puts up 41, and he has a stellar performance. But that's what he is. That's what he is. He's a stellar player. You want the ball in his hands late, and they won. Did it in regulation, did it in overtime.
I mean, was there ever any doubt about his ability to dominate a game? I mean, this was...
They played, they were slow out of the gate. South Carolina cut it to a short deficit, but he played like he's been playing the entire time.
Yeah, they were a 17.5-point road favorite. South Carolina's been terrible this year. They're the worst team in the net rankings in the SEC, and if not for Brandon Miller, they lose that game going away. No one else could do anything. The strange part about that game was the guy that's been in the news over-delivered and was terrific and single-handedly won the game, and all of his teammates collapsed last night. Couldn't do anything. Now, is that the weight of all this, the murder on the, with the teammate, and then all this news, is that weighing on the teammates and not Brandon Miller? I don't know, but what I knew and what I saw, they lined up, and that is that Brandon Miller is a terrific basketball talent and the best player in the country, and he showed it last night, and he avoided disaster for Alabama and what would have been a road loss. I was talking with Davey, our producer, before the show. If they're playing at any other SEC team last night outside of South Carolina and maybe one other, Ole Miss maybe, the two worst teams in the conference right now, they lose that game. They're lucky they had South Carolina on the road and not someone else, or they're losing. Now, with that chant of lock them up, here's the good news for Alabama on what's left. They got a home game against Arkansas. They've got a home game against Auburn. And they go to Texas A&M, which may be the friendliest fan base in the SEC. They are known for being hospitable and only cheering for their team. It's going to be packed because that could be for the SEC title outright in the regular season. Will Texas A&M fans in a packed house step it up? Because what we saw at South Carolina last night were chants, but as you could hear, you could barely hear it because no one's attending South Carolina basketball games because they're terrible. So they're not really going to face that huge road environment. Example, if this all came out before they played at Tennessee a week ago, how loud are those chants? How nasty is that environment for Brandon Miller there in front of 22,000 people?
What about SEC tournament?
SEC tournament, unless they play Kentucky, It's going to be a
Tennessee.
very neutral. Yeah, Tennessee could have some fans, but it's going to be a neutral environment for the most part. NCAA tournament, depending on matchup and venue, probably a pretty neutral environment for them also. So I don't know that he's going to get it that bad from the crowd because he's not going to see a truly hostile crowd.
Nate Oats, of course, had media availability post-game, and he started his press conference by apologizing for the events of this past Tuesday. And here's a portion of what he had to say.
Quite a game, but before we get into the game, just want to address yesterday's press conference and my response to the Brandon Miller question. I'm not here to make excuses, but I want to make it clear that I didn't have the details from the hearing that morning since I was coming straight from practice. And I used a poor choice of words, making it appear like I wasn't taking this tragic situation seriously, which we have throughout the course of it. I sincerely apologize for that. I know Greg shared some information earlier today on the situation. I don't really have anything more to add other than what he's already said. So.
Start on Zoom with Nick Kelly.
Yeah, Nate, what led the decision for Brandon to play today?
Well, as Greg said earlier, we make decisions based on available facts, and that's what we did here.
So, Chad, both guys, Byrne and Oates, are saying that they didn't know about the fact, every detail of what came out in that hearing. After Oates said, yeah, we knew about that in a comment made on Tuesday. If both guys didn't know about the text message that was sent and the fact that Miller brought the gun back to the scene, how could you let him play last night if you just found out about that on Tuesday?
It's a good point, and that's a bit of new information, right? I mean, we assume they knew everything.
Well, it's because Oates said,
along.
yeah, we knew about that. That's how he started the comment whenever he made the comment that wrong place, wrong time.
And then he covered by saying, I was coming off the court and, didn't know that the hearing had happened, and that's why I responded the way I did. Yeah, I mean, that's a new bit of info that would be important if you're trying to make a decision on someone's eligibility or whether or not they're going to participate in athletics. So that's new info. But again, this just goes back to Alabama has just decided that we are going to go full steam ahead. Consequences be damned. Reputation of our athletics program be damned. We are trying to win a national title, and Brandon Miller gives us a chance to do it, so we don't care about what everyone thinks. Now, I shouldn't say they completely don't care because they have spoken. Now, granted, Greg Byrne goes on with Alabama grad Reese Davis in one of his interviews, so it's not like he's going to the most hard-hitting journalist that's going to cover Alabama. Speaking of hard-hitting journalism, the question after that in the press conference, and I was watching it live last night, was from some Alabama writer who said, can you talk about the mental fortitude of Brandon Miller to score 41 tonight and win that game with all the noise around him? And I'm thinking, man, this is a systemic problem with that school. They're not alone, but I do think that they're at the forefront of colleges in a small town where that football, the athletics program, when anyone's doing well, they are fiercely protected by everyone around Alabama, and it's always been that way.
Conference, really.
Yeah, but specifically Bama is way worse than I think almost everywhere else, and how insulated it is, and how people that cover that program cover it. Because, I mean, has an Alabama person ever broken bad news, about the Alabama program? We have guys on from VolQuest. They've broken plenty of bad news about Tennessee athletics over the years. Other Knoxville media outlets have broken bad news or researched bad stories about athletics there. That's just not the case at Alabama. But Hutton, your point is well made about they did get new information. They still did nothing with it.
Well, they're saying that now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nate Oates didn't say that, but again, Nate Oates' crutch is, I came off the court. I didn't know the hearing was happening that day. I was thrown off guard by the first question, and I answered it in an insensitive manner, and I apologize. Here's the other thing about Nate Oates. The man does not look sympathetic to anything. I don't know. I'm not going to crush him over because it just could be his demeanor, but he's going to come across poorly every time he speaks because there's something about the tics in his voice and his face as he's talking about it that he looks dismissive of everything. even when he's saying that he's not and he's taking it seriously, he has a demeanor and tone about him that seems dismissive about all of this and does not seem overly genuine.
Nervous, extremely nervous.
Well, the first time he wasn't nervous. The first time he was irritated with the question, I thought. That time, I'll give you that. He seemed a little nervous talking about it. You could tell he was also reading notes from his laptop.
Yeah.
When you're watching it live, he kept looking back at talking points of what he wanted to say about it. But they're going to fall back on Greg Byrne. Greg Byrne has done some interviews now, the AD, and he's going to be the one that's going to issue all, official statements on it. But look, what happened last night is no surprise to me. An inferior basketball team in the SEC could not defend the best player in America, who's going to be a top 3 or 4 pick in the NBA draft. And Alabama has reaped the rewards of Brandon Miller ever since that awful night when this happened. And they've done nothing to him. They haven't punished him at all. They will continue to reap the rewards on the court from him. And they are a national championship favorite because of Brandon Miller. And that's what Alabama's concerned about and not much else.
The only person wrong place, wrong time was Jamia Harris, who lost her life at the age of 23 with a young child. And the focus has been on Brandon Miller and whether or not he should be allowed to play, and he shouldn't be. And Bama's allowing him to play and move forward with it. The question is, in a 24-hour news cycle system that we're in, how long does this last? How long does the focus last on this? Because no one was really talking about Darius Miles. Right? That wasn't a storyline.
That's a good point.
It was a storyline for a night in Nashville as Alabama beat Vandy, and they had an emotional scene in the locker room post-game. Then it's just been about Alabama being number 1 in the country and then playing Tennessee and everything that's taking place on the court. And now the focus is off the court with Miller on the court and remains there as the top player in the conference. Coming up.
Here's my guess, by the way, Hutton.
Yeah.
This will matter through SEC tournament in Nashville. And once we get to the NCAA tournament, it will mostly go away. It'll be all about, can Alabama win it all? But I do think this lasts. In terms of people on broadcast discussing it, shows like ours talking about it, I think it probably lasts another 2 weeks, through the SEC tournament. And once we get to that Thursday and Friday of the NCAA tournament, it'll go away, and everyone's just going to talk about Brandon Miller, the player, and Alabama, the team.
Coming up, Trey Wallace will join the discussion. We'll hit the headlines from last night in Columbia. And you can, of course, read his work at OutKick.com. He's got a new podcast up with a very cool guest this week as well. Trey Wallace is next on OutKick 360.
So can you explain to the viewers who might not know anything about MMA, and I got to be honest with you, I'm a casual UFC fan. I watch the big cards, but I'm not an expert in the nitty gritty. Like, what is the traditional path for like an MMA guy if he's chasing to get to the top of that world? Like, what's that look like? We know what it looks like for football. We know what it looks like for basketball. How's that play out for an MMA fighter?
I mean, that's the big difference between MMA and like the traditional sports you're talking about. Like, you have the collegiate, that line of going, and mixed martial arts, you don't really have. I mean, you have the wrestlers aspects, but being a good wrestler doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a great MMA fighter. So it really looks a lot different for everybody. I mean, I was a traditional martial artist as a kid growing up, and then I found MMA was big because when we were on the same age when I was in high school, that's when the UFC started, like Chuck Liddell and all those guys started building the sport like crazy. And that's how I found it. I was just originally actually a hockey player. I played competitive high school. I played junior hockey.
Oh, you played juniors? Where at?
Yep. I played on the East Coast in the EJ, East Coast Hockey League. So yeah. And not East Coast Professional Hockey League, but EJ was up in the north. It was good. It was good hockey. We played again. I mean, I see guys I played against that are in the NHL all the time, and I went to a high school literally just for hockey. I went to a prep school for a little bit just for hockey, and that was like my initial that's what kind of gave me that competitive athletic part of myself that I was definitely able to apply into the military, and I was definitely able to apply into fighting as well. So what happened is my senior year of high school, I was playing juniors. I decided that I wanted to come back to high school to play for my high school just because of, I don't know, girls and stuff or something. I don't know why I did it, but I came back to my high school. I came back to my high school hockey team. I played it. We were doing really good. was a playoff game, and my first shift of the game was like big playoff game. I blew on my shoulder. I went to go hit a kid, blew on my shoulder. So my following year, I missed a lot of like the times we hit tryouts in the summer to play for the teams in the next winter for like good junior teams. And that's kind of when I picked up MMA, because like I wasn't, you know what I mean? I kind of got more into MMA then. I was like, it just kind of gave me an outlet that wasn't, I always put all my energy into hockey. Now this gave me a separate outlet, and it was MMA, and I got competitive into that, did that for 2 years, and then until I eventually joined the military. So I think MMA fighters, they really could come from any branch, you know what I mean? But like for me, I played a lot of other sports growing up, and I think that helped me train like a professional athlete to be a professional MMA fighter.
So I got to ask, what's it like to get punched in the face?
Obviously I try not to get punched in the face as much as possible. I do not like to get punched in the face. I feel like, which is probably not a good thing, but over time you kind of get used to it. You know what I mean? I don't even blink my eyes when I get punched in the face. I remember when I used to get punched, get rocked, you get like this adrenaline feeling, like, oh my God, what happened? I don't really get that too much. It's either I'm getting knocked out or I'm just okay. So it's not the best feeling, but I try to avoid it. I try to be smarter, because concussions, you're hearing all these things about concussions this day and age, and I try to only do my hard sparring only when I need to for my fights. I used to, when I was a kid, I used to just, let's go spar. It's fun. I love it. You know what I mean? Not anymore. I try to be smart about what I do.
Well, when it comes to the preparing for a fight, now what's your record as a pro since you've gone pro?
I am 5-1.
5-1, and
yep.
That's wildly impressive. So if you were an NFL team with that winning record, you'd be amazing, right?
From 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine, OutKick 360 rolls on. Chad, I'm watching last night, and I'm thinking, I can't look away, because you're right. The anticipation was Brandon Miller's going to, hit the game. He's going to lead in the victory. If not a regulation, when it went to overtime, it was setting up for that storyline. But at the same time, and I think you sent the text, you were like, man, this is just uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it's
just weird to me.
It is, because we're watching a freshman play after a gun that was in his car was used in what has resulted in capital murder charges. And it was done, the shooting took place January 15th. And the details of that emerged this past Tuesday publicly. And he's playing, and he's helping Alabama win against a team that has no business playing head-to-head with him whatsoever. And I'm thinking the priorities here and the story should be about the fact that there's no way he should be on the court. And instead, it's about his performance and the 41 points. You said you thought SEC Network did a great job post-game last night.
Yeah, it wasn't SEC Network. It was the ESPN coverage. Kevin Connors, Sean Farnham, and I'm blanking on the third member in studio who was actually the strongest against what was going on at Alabama, was terrific. I thought last night. Asked all the right questions. Sean Farnham said, well, I guess we'll try to separate the basketball from the murder. And he said, but, the basketball is exactly what I expected. Brandon Miller was great. Alabama's terrific on the court. And the other analyst said, this is really sad because it's taken away from college basketball. This is staying on all of college basketball right now that we have to talk about this with this guy on the court and playing. I was really surprised with how well they handled it. Kevin Connors even questioned the questions. He said, Nate Oats is going to face better questions than he did in that post-game press conference from his own media at some point, and he's going to have to answer those questions. And I keep thinking, he really doesn't, because he's probably just going to fall back now on Greg Byrne's comments and his statement whenever he answers questions about any of it and just move on.
Trey Wallace joins us. OutKick.com is where you can read his work. He was covering this game and more. Trey, what did you make of the scene last night in Columbia as Brandon Miller hits 41, including the game winner?
At first, I was like, goodness gracious, we got ourselves a good basketball game. And that's, that's just diving into just the college basketball of it. I thought, to be honest with you guys, I didn't know how to react at first. It was weird. It was ESPN putting up the graphics and talking about everything during the game. And I'm trying to think to myself, when's the last time something like this has happened where we've had not maybe like this circumstance where we've had some huge controversy and the production has had to talk about it for the entire game pretty much in while we're focusing on a great game as it's going. So I think that ESPN and the announcers did a fantastic job trying to break this thing down. I think that, Chad, I agree with you. Post-game and pre-game, they did a great job, I think, trying to narrow this down and separate the two. Separate the fact that South Carolina played a badass basketball game last night and almost beat Alabama. Also, over here, Brandon Miller, you got this situation going on with Nate Oats on the sideline. And it was kind of confusing at times, if I'm being honest with you. And then we got to the post-game press conference with Nate Oats. And first thing that the SID for basketball says on there, hey, look, we're going to take questions, but only questions concerning the game tonight. Well, how do you think that went? We got 5 questions. It was all about Brandon Miller. It was all about Nate Oats. And then they ended it, which I expected. I expected that to happen. So I just, I sit back, guys, and I'm still trying to kind of wrap my head around maybe what I saw last night and add on to the fact that Brandon Miller probably had the best performance that I've seen of a college basketball player all season long, putting up 41 points. It's just, you got to take a minute and kind of wrap your head around it. And I know we'll talk about this a little bit more, but you know what? In this whole situation too, I put a lot of the blame on Nate Oats, and I put a lot of the blame on the athletic administration at Alabama, kind of in my opinion, for the way that they've handled that. And we'll discuss that. But that the post-game comments did not match up with what was said yesterday during the day before during Nate Oats' press conference. So it was just a confusing night, especially for me at 12 o'clock trying to figure out what he was talking about.
Well, and it also the detail. So He's asked coming off the court on Tuesday about Brandon Miller's involvement, and he answers by starting by saying, "Yeah, we knew about that," and then goes into what caused the backlash, and rightfully so, the response that we've all had. From there, he issues the statement on Wednesday, and then Greg Byrne, the AD pregame, says that he was not aware, he was not told of that detail, that the gun was brought back and Brandon Miller had it in his car as he drove it back to Darius Miles, who possessed the gun. It's his legal firearm. The fact that the AD is saying he didn't know about it, and Nate Oats on Tuesday is saying, yeah, we knew about that. What message does that send?
That first of all said, okay, and I'm glad we got to this, Jonathan. Thank you for setting me up, buddy. This goes to the fact that the communication between the higher-ups at Alabama, the head basketball coach, AD, the communications department at Alabama, in my opinion, failed this situation. Because you look at, okay, what did we get on Tuesday? We got Nate Oats coming off the practice court and saying, well, we knew that. We knew what happened. We've known about this. And he kept going back to the Vanderbilt game. You know, he's talked about the Vanderbilt game numerous amount of times about how, you know, they responded at the Vanderbilt game the next day, blah, blah, blah. And it caught me by surprise when all of a sudden we get on a Zoom press conference last night, and Nate Oats is like, well, I didn't know about details. There were certain things I didn't know about. Guys, if we're being honest with each other, you can't tell me that if there is something going on with an athlete on campus, that coach, that administration, the president's office, I promise you, the Alabama University Police Department is filling these guys in, because they have to know when it comes to, if we are going to, like, they had to know, let's just say a week later, are we going to continue playing Brandon Miller? Like, they had to know, they had to ask these questions. I am not under the illusion that, and this is, I don't know how this is going to come across. I'm not trying to knock Nate Oats when I say this, but I'm not under the illusion Nate Oats didn't know everything that went on during that event that night and Brandon Miller's involvement. He said he did. He said he knew, we knew about that. So it's like, what did you not know in between when the incident happened and then the press conference late last night around like 11:30? Like, it, and this just goes back to the communication part. This is just bad. You got Greg Byrne coming out and saying, okay, well, the president's approved it. You know, we talked to some board people, like, we're good with him being able to play. Nate Oats said that last night. And that's fine. If you think that he is eligible to play and you're not going to catch backlash from a lawsuit or a civil suit or any whatever, that's fine. That's your decision. But it is weird at the same time for them to say, or Nate Oats to say, we don't, you know, we knew what was going on, but now, okay, we don't, there's new evidence. Like, I promise you, guys, this is like PR 101, and you guys know this. You guys have dealt with a lot of teams there in Nashville and nationally. When they put out statements like that, and that attorney put out that statement yesterday, clarifying Brandon Miller, trying to, you know, doing what an attorney is supposed to do, help his client out and do what he is hired to do. You can't tell me Alabama didn't know every single specific detail in that, because Alabama released a statement of their own. I think it was like 30 to 45 minutes after the attorney released his. So this is just all perfect timing for Alabama. But then it doesn't make sense when you say, okay, there were some details we didn't know. No, I'm not buying that. I'm just not.
And Trey, you're from the state of Alabama. You know how media works around the big programs in that state, specifically Alabama. It strikes me as a situation where the powers that be just had their fingers crossed and were hoping and praying that nothing would come out until after the NCAA tournament on Brandon Miller's involvement in this. And then when it came out, they were saddened that they were going to have to say something about it. And they also deep down knew that not a single person that covers that program was going to do any due diligence and do any digging on this and dig up something bad against the university or against that program. Do you feel like that they were just kind of sitting on their hands and the info they had in hopes this thing wouldn't be released until after the season?
There's a couple things there, Chad. I appreciate that question. Thanks for clarifying I'm from the state as well. I am very surprised that we got until February 21st and found out that Brandon Miller was somehow involved in this case. Tuscaloosa is a very small town. I lived there for 2 years. It is if you go to the local restaurant, okay, you're going to probably figure out a few things and hear a few things, and word's going to kind of spread. I'm very surprised by that part. And that's not a knock at the people down there.
But let me follow up on that, Trey, because I'm not surprised. It was always going to be Pete Thamel or someone of that ilk that was going to report this. When was the last time we saw a report? You reported something negative on Tennessee when you were covering Tennessee in that market. When was the last time we've seen an Alabama reporter at any level report anything negative or break negative news about that program. I can't remember a time when that's happened. So that part doesn't surprise me.
It's been a while. And when I say surprise, I mean, I'm kind of surprised that, there wasn't a police detective that was talking quietly. I'm surprised that they're having dinner, and somehow it leaks out or somebody mentions the name Brandon Miller. Like I understand what you're saying. When the Jeremy Pruitt stuff came out, I get it. I went back and I did my job the next day, and was Tennessee pissed off at me for about 3 or 4 days? Absolutely. We moved past that. I understand what you're coming from when it comes to the Alabama situation in Tuscaloosa. Sometimes I'm not just going to say Alabama. Athletic administrations will hold a lot of things over your head, and that comes to access into programs. That comes into your questions being answered. I can't sit here and talk about what other reporters in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham and Montgomery and Mobile are doing. That's not my job to critique them. We all have different jobs to do as reporters. But has there been damning stuff that came out of Alabama in the last 5 years? No, not really. It usually comes from Pete Thamel or Chris Lowe or something along those lines. And again, that's not a knock. We're just being realistic here. So when I look at this overall, I think that the fact that we got to Tuesday and Nate Oats was talking about coming out of a practice facility, and we said a prayer for all that was involved. I just have a very, very hard time believing that he all of a sudden was caught off guard. Here's another thing too, real quick. The communications person in Alabama could have said to Nate Oats, and maybe he said something to him coming from the practice facility to the podium, hey man, you're going to be asked about this. Here's a statement. Here's something you can read off of. This is the perfect statement I came up with. Read it. We'll be good to go. But no, you go up there and you put your foot in your mouth. Then you have to release another statement. And that's what I'm getting at. Like the communication problem, guys, at Alabama, it seems like it runs through the president's office, then it gets down to the AD's office, and then all of a sudden the coaches kind of deal with it. And Nick Saban is going to do whatever the hell Nick Saban wants to do.
And Nate Oats.
Okay. Right. And Nate Oats.
Greg Burns taking orders.
Nate Oats is the 4th highest employee in the state of Alabama. Okay. That comes with a lot of power. I just feel like during this whole situation that it could have been handled better. And I'm not talking about like the Brandon Miller and the incident and all that stuff. I'm talking about everything that's led up to Tuesday. It could have come out better because here's one thing. And I know that they couldn't, release the so-called information that's in the testimony and whatnot, but that was going to get out. If they wanted to, there's a way to get it out that Brandon Miller was somehow involved in this and try to get ahead of it. A school can easily call up a favor if they want something out into the media. Okay. It happens every single day. Let's not sit here and act like it doesn't. But the fact that we went 2 months without hearing Brandon Miller's name, and then all of a sudden the whole world is shocked on Tuesday when they hear this testimony. It didn't have to come to that.
Oh, and by the way, the athletic director at the University of Alabama claims that he learned about it on Tuesday. And he's still stuck with what they've done, which is play Brandon Miller since January 16th in Nashville.
Yeah,
that's my overriding thing. To me, the story is the AD and the head coach are saying two different things. One knew about
That's
it.
exactly right.
And the AD that oversees the athletic department claims he didn't know about that detail. That Miller was sent a text from Davis that said, "Bring me my joint," which is his gun. And he arrives, and there's a shooting that takes place outside of the 1225 sports bar. That detail to me is extremely significant. And then last night, he's on the court hitting the game-winning shot.
You can't tell me with a straight face that Greg Byrne and Nate Oats know two different things about the situation. They're all on the same page. You got to be. In this situation, you have to be on the same page. So I don't buy the whole Greg Byrne knew something different. Greg Byrne is Nate Oates' boss. Like, Greg Byrne has to report to the president. Greg Byrne is the one that's going to probably get something from the local police department about this type of stuff. Like, I'm not, and I don't know if it was a miscommunication. I have no idea what was going through Greg Burns' head at the time, but I don't buy that the two had different stories and they knew that they had different stories, if that makes sense. So that's the one thing that kind of threw me off about all of it, listening to Greg Burns' interview with Pete Thamel, which, you know, and I love Pete. Me and Pete Thamel are good buddies, but it's not a coincidence that Greg Byrne goes on with Pete Thamel before Alabama plays basketball that night.
And he also goes on with Reese Davis.
He doesn't go on with a local
Alabama grad that's national. Is the other guy decides to go on with. We try not to be naive here on this show or at OutKick, right, Trey? So let me ask you this simple question. If this wasn't Brandon Miller driving the car that had the murder weapon in it, instead it was freshman Kai Spears, 6'2", 160 from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that hasn't played in a game yet for Alabama this year, is Kai Spears still a member of the Alabama basketball team after they find out this info?
No, he's in the transfer portal right now with a lawyer and trying to figure out where he's going to play basketball next season.
Thank you. And I think everyone would probably deep down answer that question the same way.
But yesterday, the athletic director at Alabama, Greg Burns, said he learned about that text message detail on Tuesday in testimony. And he said he and the athletic department of the university treated Brandon Miller like any other student athlete. He is saying that any other student athlete 2 days later would play. If the coach wanted him to play, they would play.
He also said, when asked by Reese Davis, what do you say to people that say you're giving preferential treatment to the best player in America over this? And his response was, well, that's a fair narrative. I'm thinking, well, duh.
Yeah.
And then he goes about saying, but we did treat this like we would any other student athlete, and we wanted to be fair to the student athlete, blah, 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 blah. Deep down, the problem is, Trey, you said that he's their boss. That ain't the case at Alabama. It should be that way. He should be their boss, and they should have a president as a boss. But Nick Saban and Nate Oates, they don't have a boss at Alabama. They do what they want. They say what they want. They get away with what they want, and they answer to no one. And that's the problem with making Alabama look terrible in all of this right now. That's my assessment of the situation.
Well, it is. And look, the loss of life is terrible. The incident is unthinkable. Okay. But the way that Alabama has handled this, man, you're doing yourself no good, by the way. You're making yourself look bad. I don't care if you go on a couple shows and you try to explain yourself. You've had multiple statements that have been released out of that athletic administration building over the last couple of days. You had an apology for Nate Oates. You had a statement after Brandon Miller's attorney released his version of the events. And then you go on national television and you're talking about how Brandon Miller can play. If you want to play that game, that's cool. But I promise you right now, the way I look at Alabama is they got to fix some things in their communications and higher up department and have a better ladder when it comes to what gets out and what doesn't get out. And I think that they could have actually handled this better. And you know what? I think that once they had the facts, like the preliminary facts of this case, gentlemen, maybe 2 weeks after the incident happened, I think it would have been very smart for Alabama to release some kind of statement saying, Brandon Miller, look, here's Brandon Miller. This is what happened. Like, you can read in it to how you want, whatever. Get out in front of it. Don't wait till 2 months later, 2 weeks before the SEC tournament in Nashville and 3 weeks before the NCAA tournament to release something. And then, oh, by the way, the Brandon Miller will be off the Alabama campus within the next month. Either way, he's going to be off the campus. I mean, he might have to finish a semester, but he's going to go train to be an NBA pro. So it's just bad all around. It just stinks.
OutKick.com is where you can learn more, and you can check out the Trey Wallace podcast with Trey Smith, this week's special guest. Trey, thank you so much, man. We enjoy it.
Guys, have a great weekend. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Trey.
Same to you. Trey Wallace there. Armando Salguero joins us in the next hour, and we will continue this discussion as well.
Crisis team talk next?
Yeah. So it's award season, right? The Oscars is around the corner, and we know what happened the last time we saw the Oscars.
Someone got slapped.
Yeah. So what happens if that happens again? That's next on OutKick 360.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
So the higher that number can be, the better you are with the committee. It's really that simple.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
He's got incredible taste in which media figures he listens to.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
Why are we going through Melania's goods? Don't make Brittany Griner out to be some type freedom fighter. Shouldn't there be a little bit of common sense? Let's roll them, big boy. What do you got?
They want to find someone to be the face of domestic terrorism, and they want it to be a right-wing Trump supporter. Don't let them entrap you into doing something dumb. But they were hyper-rational. They looked at the data, and they said it makes no sense for me to submit to this COVID shot mandate.
Get the shot or you can't go to your brother's wedding. Get the shot or you can't go to your daughter's graduation. Get the shot or else.
So we remember the Chris Rock and Will Smith deal from the Oscars.
I'll never forget it. Unforgettable was that moment.
Oh, so the Academy has created a crisis team. By the way, the Oscars are coming up in March. They've created a crisis team, something we've never had before, clearly. We have many plans in place. We've run through many scenarios. So it's our hope that we will be prepared for anything that we may or may not anticipate. But we're planning just in case it happens.
You know, when Angela Bassett slaps the hell out of Cate Blanchett, we're going to be ready with this crisis team this year at the Oscars. This is so stupid. Do you know what a crisis team is? Your security.
Yes.
You have security at the Oscars. You have all of these huge celebrities that probably have their own security close by, and you have your own venue security. You don't need to church it up and call it a crisis team when it reinforced security that's there. Anyone could have handled this better than what they did a year ago. They should have allowed security to escort Will Smith out of the venue after he walked on stage and assaulted a man in front of the world at the Oscars. It's a very simple concept. Because you were so dumb a year ago doesn't mean you have to change everything. Just be better with your security this year.
I mean, so at worst, you just go over to him during the commercial break and say, hey, can you come back? The problem was he's winning, and they wanted him on stage.
Yeah.
That's the scenario they've got to figure out.
That's what's even worse. Like your thinking should have been, we can't allow this guy back on stage because we know he's about to win. We got to get him out of here, and he'll, receive the award in absentia. And, by the way, we'll be on time on the broadcast finally because we'll have no final speech, acceptance speech. So we'll get out to the network on time for the first time ever.
Who knows what crisis team even means?
It's so stupid. It's called security. Do a better job with your security. Handle it better. Anyone assault someone on television or anywhere else at the Oscars, you politely go get them and ask them to leave. If they won't get up with you and leave, then you physically remove them from the venue, and you go on and give out the award for best editing. That's how you handle this.
Speaking of Hollywood, there was an idiot that over the weekend, he tried to blow up the Hollywood sign, or he was threatening to.
I feel like this happens almost every year. Someone tries to do something with that sign.
Dr. Evil style, right? TMZ said that he called the Hollywood Police Department, threatening like, hey, we're going to blow up this Los Angeles landmark unless you pay us a whopping $10,000. The problem was...
That's how you know it's not serious with that figure?
The problem with this idiot is that he called the Hollywood, Florida Police Department and not Hollywood, California. He called their crisis team, which would take that seriously.
Does Hollywood, Florida also have a sign that they could blow up? Damn it, they're on the water tower again. We got to get there quicker.
Maybe a billboard.
That Hollywood, Florida water tower, it's a threat once again. Someone wants to blow it up.
So, Hollywood, Florida called Hollywood, California and said, hey, there's an idiot that's threatening to do this, but he called us instead. Real smart.
The stupidity of people. Is anyone else secretly rooting for an incident to happen at the Oscars again this year?
Yes.
Just to see how the crisis team handles it?
Who's hosting it?
That's a good question. Jimmy Kimmel? I'm just going to throw out a guess. Is that who's hosting?
According to Google, yes, it is. Yeah. Jimmy is the perfect host to help us recognize the incredible artists and films of our 95th Oscars.
Yeah. He'll say nothing controversial. That's exactly what you want.
He will not be slapped, but he should stage something.
I guarantee he's being told not to.
Should slap him on stage.
Yeah.
Headlines next on OutKick 360.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking that we're going to be practicing the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion
There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis. The word really that was lacking in all of this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Just like that, the second hour is here. OutKick 360 across the OutKick network. Hutton and Withrow with you. Armando Salguero from OutKick will be with us in 20 minutes. Bobby Carpenter in an hour talking college football, headlines, and more. Looking forward to that. Chad, Aaron Rodgers has emerged from his darkness retreat.
Glory, glory, hallelujah.
He has seen the light. And based on the photos that I've seen of said darkness retreat, it's not as bad as I would have thought. It's not like you're sitting in a tent with just a blanket around you in total darkness as punishment or torture.
Yeah, I mean, he described it really well on
I think
McAfee
it's what every
as you're in a home, you're in a room. I thought it was actually going to be bigger than 300 square feet that he had, but it has a bed, it has a mat, it has a bathroom, it has an area for your food.
Yes.
And you can walk and get wherever you want. You have a chance to feel the room out for a while before they shut the lights off on you. You're not locked in. You can leave at any time. The door locks from the inside. The more I read about it, the more I'm like, I could do this.
I would love this.
I can make this happen.
I don't have kids, but especially if you have kids, you want to just get away. This looks like the perfect room to do that.
I just think the hard thing to separate from and to think about is how slowly time would pass if you were in this state. If you're just in a room alone with your own thoughts, with no sensory stimulation at all. No light, can't see anything in front of you, can't see in front of your own face, and you're just sitting there thinking, laying down for that long. If you're not asleep, I feel like time would just creep by. Maybe it goes faster than normal time. I don't know, but I think it would just that's what would be hard to separate is how slowly time passes when you're doing this.
So he went to Sky Cave, which is in Oregon, and the owner said that Rodgers left the dark room in the facility on Wednesday, so it was early. He left early. He did not make it the full 4 days for the darkness retreat. But no word on his future as we await what's going to happen. He was hoping to emerge and say something. Do you think he announces it on McAfee?
I don't think so. I don't think he's made a lot of big announcements. He's talked about things there, but I don't know that he's going to use that forum to make any announcement on his future. Probably joke about what it was like and talk about that, but not reveal anything to those guys. I was really hoping, Hutton, that he would just walk out to a bunch of cameras in a press conference.
Yeah.
Like microphones from every network were in front of him. And he's, rubbing his eyes and can't see the light. And he's got a beard. And then he immediately announces his vision and what's next for him. That was my hope. But, of course, he's going to wait a little while to say what he saw.
So Tom Pelissero, listening to him on NFL Network, he says that Rodgers basically has veto power over any trade that Green Bay would want to make. Because he can just say, well, I've got my contract right now, and I could also just retire if he doesn't want to go to that spot. So this feels like a situation where Rodgers will determine, I think it's a similar spot to what we've seen from previous trades where you're allowed to go out, chat with teams, and then you figure out who you want. Watson did this. Figure out who you want, and then the team gets compensation in return. Sean Payton did this too. He had to go visit Mickey Loomis in New Orleans to determine what the compensation would be, and then start going with the teams start interviewing with the teams he wanted to interview with. So while he doesn't have a no trade clause in his contract, he can just say, "Hey, I'd rather retire than be traded here." And then why would you trade for him if you're that organization?
Well, don't you get the sense, just big picture here, macro, everyone that's not a Packers fan wants him to be with another team? That gives him a chance to win and win big somewhere else?
I do, just because
Brooke, who's here, one of our producers, is a huge Packers fan.
Right.
She wants Rodgers back, I'm guessing.
And I would want that.
Because that's their best chance to win and win big. But I'm saying if you're not a Packers fan, I think the common sports fan that just likes big stories and big things, I want to see him in the Big Apple. That's what I want. I want him to see him with the Jets to see if they can do something big.
Or in Vegas.
I'd much rather see him with the Jets. But, yeah, I mean, Vegas, too, would be – to me, that would be better than going back to the Packers.
Plus, Vegas is hosting the Super Bowl. So you've got that storyline going, too. I want the change up in the storyline more than I want just him back and rinse and repeat, because we've done this process now, 2 years in a row? Going on 3? The third offseason where his future is uncertain. If he says, hey, I'd like to stay in Green Bay, let's work it out, Jordan Love is reportedly going to demand a trade at this point. And he should.
Of course.
The time for quarterbacks to really cash in is the second contract. And his is a year away. So why would you not be like, hey, trade me so I can at least go ahead and start the clock and actually try to do something with a second deal with the team that actually is going to play me, or give me the opportunity to play in the very near future instead of Rodgers continuing to kick the can down the road. Chad, the XFL ratings are in. They kicked off over the weekend. I'm not surprised that they're as low as they are. Not great. They did not surpass what the USFL did on
half.
Easter.
It was less than half of the audience of their biggest game.
USFL kicked off on Easter of last year. XFL kicks off a week after the Super Bowl. And while there was plenty of hype around this because of the ESPN machine, the PR machine that's, it's on their network, they're going to talk about it. It was background noise at best. And I'll go back to any other league. Any of these startup leagues, you've got to get to a point where you can have some recognizable quarterback play. And the storylines can't be, here is this failed quarterback, Paxton Lynch, in the season opener yet again, showing you why he can't even make it in the XFL. That it has to be better than that bar. And that's what we're never going to reach, because the top quarterbacks, not even the elite ones, not even the starters, the backups and the practice squad guys, they're all under contract to where they're not going to be playing here. I'd like to get to a point where you could see a partnership with the NFL and one of these leagues. I don't know who it would be, but until that happens, the top quarterbacks are not going to be getting reps in a league where they can actually get live reps. I'm not saying Jordan Love qualifies for this, but if you haven't seen your guy play, we saw this a little bit in NFL Europe. I'd like to get back to where the practice squad guys are at least playing in a league like this to get reps and have an opportunity to work into a rotation at the pro level.
I think the biggest problem with the XFL is demand. It's the timing of it. That's the biggest issue. The USFL was very smart. To me, the top reason was this. Wait over 2 months until after the Super Bowl. Start in the spring. Start Easter weekend where there's not as much going on. And then go to 4th of July. I think that's a good window of time to launch a minor league, to launch a separate league that is spring football. The biggest issue I have with the XFL, I watched some of it. The production value of ESPN was really good.
It was.
The gameplay was fine. You know, I think it was on par with USFL from what I saw from the games itself. The biggest issue is Americans are fat and happy off the Super Bowl, and they're thrilled with football, and they've had a lot of it since September and late August from the year before. And then the next week, you're going to drop the XFL on a weekend where the Daytona 500 is happening and other things. I just think that's not when people want a minor league football. They just saw the Super Bowl, and the next week they're seeing a minor league. USFL does a good job of driving up demand because we haven't had football for a little while.
I would like to know what's on the TV if Tiger's not playing on Saturday. I think that's also a factor. Tiger, and he's playing at 4 under, by the way, on that round. He shot a 67, I believe, that day.
Yeah, I mean, the ratings for
that's what I was watching.
I was looking at Sunday. The biggest game, I believe, was a Sunday game. The XFL rated. That's one they got 1.5 million. USFL premiered on Saturday night last year. The night before Easter was over 3. So it was over double the audience for USFL. Now, keep in mind, that was simulcast on Fox and NBC.
That's right.
The USFL premiere. Over double the audience, but Genesis Invitational had a little over 2 million on Sunday. Daytona 500 had over 8 million. We know the All-Star Game, the worst ever, but was still over 4 million. That's almost four times the audience of the biggest XFL crowd they had in terms of viewing at any point over the weekend.
Well, again, I think it's watchable. It's not unwatchable football, but the recognizable names, you've got to be able to come, and it can't be like, oh, here's this guy that is yet again playing bad, and we've seen this before.
I just think, first off, we're going to find out if it's too many in terms of minor leagues, because the USFL a year ago had the privilege of being the only one with no XFL.
And the model of not traveling versus traveling, which the XFL is doing.
Well, and my biggest strength, I think, with USFL, again, sort of goes away because you have over 2 months of no football at all, and then it dropped, and people were excited about it, had a good rating the first night. Well, now it's just going to bleed right into each other. So what does opening night of the USFL look like after 2 months of XFL? Does it matter? Is it watering down both products? We'll find out. But at least when you just compare debut to debut, kickoff event, USFL more than doubled the audience.
Chad, Netflix, I've been watching the PGA LIV Tour, full swing, 8-part series. I'm through episode 2. I'm
on episode 8 right now, halfway through.
Okay. There's another piece that's coming out on NFL quarterbacks as well, and it's Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, and Marcus Mariota. They're following the behind-the-scenes aspect of those 3 QBs.
Yeah, I think the name of it is NFL Quarterback is the name of the series. It's done by Omaha Productions, Peyton Manning's company, and it's also with NFL Films, so they're getting the NFL Films access also. Super interested to watch Mahomes. I'm interested to watch Kirk Cousins. I have no interest in Marcus Mariota. I do not understand how that was your best third option of a quarterback to follow. I mean, the one thing that's interesting about him is he quit the team when he got benched and claimed he had an injury that Arthur Smith said he didn't have an injury the whole time. This is news to us. about him stepping away
he
for
said
injury.
it was a chronic knee issue.
Right. I want to see that. So when we get to the episode where they're detailing him being told he's being benched and making the decision to leave for a chronic knee injury, that's interesting.
So what they've done,
Mariota's a very nice guy. There's not going to be much interesting about following him around with a camera, I don't think, as opposed to Mahomes and Cousins.
So they have the 3 starting quarterbacks. What they've going into it, I think what they've accomplished is they were following around a future Hall of Famer, a guy that's a very average quarterback in Kirk Cousins, and a guy that was a Heisman winner and a starter and the second quarterback selected in the NFL draft that year, to a guy that's just trying to latch on and keep his starting career going as he kicks it off in Atlanta with his former offensive coordinator in Arthur Smith. So the storylines, you have 3 different levels of what the starter means across the league. And then from there, I think they always end up having something. You've got Mahomes, who feels slighted, and then it goes on this run where he's the MVP. You have Kirk Cousins that has a new head coach, and he's throwing to Justin Jefferson, and they've got all this momentum because they're winning tight, close football games. And then Mariota, the storyline with him is exactly what you just laid out.
I watch these shows for personality. You know, some behind-the-scenes stuff is good, but the guys have to have personality to bring it out and to be able to show some of it, or it's just very robotic. It's not about the level of quarterback to me. It's the fact that you could have picked 29 other NFL quarterbacks with a bigger personality than Marcus Mariota. No knock at Marcus Mariota. Great dude. He is not the guy I want to follow around a camera and show everything. Zach Wilson would have been interesting this year.
Zach Wilson,
with everything.
Who knows who they asked?
Daniel Jones. I mean, they could have. This could have been the last choice, but so many other guys I'd rather see. My favorite episode of Full Swing so far on Netflix is the episode with Joel Damon, who most people don't even know. But the dude is hilarious.
Known for his waste management actions.
He's completely at ease with being, he says, someone's got to be the 70th ranked golfer in the world. Might as well be me. Just doesn't care about winning. And it kind of follows him where everyone's like, dude, if you tried harder and put more into it, you could be a top 10, top 20 player. And he's just like, I'm fine being where I am. And, I like who I am. But that was interesting to me. That's the one I'm going to remember more than anything else on that. So you get Mahomes, you get Cousins, go find someone with more personality if you're Netflix. That would be my only complaint. Again, I may be completely surprised, and Mariota turns out to be the most interesting part of the docuseries because of the ups and downs of the year and then him getting benched. But I'm not willing to bet on that.
Chad, Vance Joseph took the job as the defensive coordinator of the Denver Broncos. He was interviewing around. He talked with the Eagles as well, and he's now paired up with Sean Payton, and he goes back to the team where he was the head coach from 2017 and 18. He's back in Denver, and he's got a great defense in front of him. He'll be a head coach again because of that.
Yeah, and returning to the team that fired him, I don't think it really matters because it's not the owner that fired him. It's new ownership now in Denver.
Yeah.
So you can look. Look, guys pledge allegiance to the flag that's flying over them in the moment. I don't think that they're that tied up about it. I will never be a Bronco again because the Broncos fired me. They would hate the coach that cut them, or they might hate the owner that brought them into the room and fired them if they didn't like the way they were treated with them. But if it's new ownership and new people involved, especially with a chance to work with Sean Payton, I don't think that it was much of a thought for Vance Joseph to go back and rejoin that organization because it's different ownership now instead of the ones that fired him. It's a great move by Sean Payton. I think it's a good move for Vance Joseph. He will be the head coach of the defense, and they've got a really good defense in Denver with some really good pieces. So I'm with you, Hutton. This is a good chance for him to launch back into a possible head coaching job.
Yeah, and one of the top defensive minds right there in Vance Joseph. And they were also looking at Fangio. Remember, he was linked with Payton, too. He ends up going to Miami. But Fangio is also a former head coach of the Denver Broncos.
Everyone wants to work with Sean Payton.
Well, the veterans do. The veteran coaches do.
Yeah, Rex Ryan. Look at the other third finalist,
Yeah.
Rex Ryan.
Look
was
who
a
he's
guy
interviewing.
coming out of TV.
He's
to do
interviewing these guys versus who Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen are talking to. It's a vastly different group of candidates.
Yeah, Jonathan Gannon ended up hiring the
Jim Bob Cooter as his OC.
for the Colts.
Yeah. So Steichen.
Steichen hired Jim Bob Cooter. Gannon hired the 32-year-old Florida defensive coordinator, Florida Gators, defensive coordinator. That's just a different level.
Yeah.
I'm illustrating the level at which
Right.
both those guys are trying to fill out their staff compared to others.
You don't want to be stuck in. And by the way, if you had a young head coach in Denver, you still, if you're a defensive coordinator, you still want to coach that defense if the coordinator's not there, and they're looking to hire someone based on the way they're built. Coming up, Armando Salguero will join us. We'll hit the NFL headlines with our OutKick senior NFL writer. That's next on OutKick 360.
So can you explain to the viewers who might not know anything about MMA, and I got to be honest with you, I'm a casual UFC fan. I watch the big cards, but I'm not an expert in the nitty gritty. Like, what is the traditional path for like an MMA guy if he's chasing to get to the top of that world? Like, what's that look like? We know what it looks like for football. We know what it looks like for basketball. How's that play out for an MMA fighter?
I mean, that's the big difference between MMA and like the traditional sports you're talking about. Like, you have the collegiate, that line of going, and then in mixed martial arts, you don't really have, you have the wrestlers aspects, but being a good wrestler doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a great MMA fighter. So it really looks a lot different for everybody. I mean, I was a traditional martial artist as a kid growing up, and then I found MMA was big because when we were on the same age when I was in high school, that's when the UFC started, like Chuck Liddell and all those guys started building the sport like crazy. And that's how I found it. I was just originally actually a hockey player. I played competitive high school. I played junior hockey.
Oh, you played juniors? Where at?
Yep. I played on the East Coast in the EJ, East Coast Hockey League. So yeah. And not East Coast Professional Hockey League, but EJ was up in the north. It was good. It was good hockey. We played again. I mean, I see guys I played against that are in the NHL all the time, and I went to a high school literally just for hockey. I went to a prep school for a little bit just for hockey, and that was like my initial that's what kind of gave me that competitive athletic part of myself that I was definitely able to apply into the military, and I was definitely able to apply into fighting as well. So what happened is my senior year of high school, I was playing juniors. I decided that I wanted to come back to high school to play for my high school just because of, I don't know, girls and stuff or something. I don't know why I did it, but I came back to my high school. I came back to my high school hockey team. I played it. We were doing really good. It was a playoff game, and my first shift of the game was like big playoff game. I blew on my shoulder. I went to go hit a kid. I blew on my shoulder. So my following year, I missed a lot of the times we hit tryouts in the summer to play for the teams in the next winter for good junior teams. And that's kind of when I picked up MMA because I wasn't, you know what I mean? I kind of got more into MMA then. I was like, it just kind of gave me an outlet that wasn't, I always put all my energy into hockey. Now this gave me a separate outlet, and it was MMA, and I got competitive into that, did that for 2 years. And then until I eventually joined the military. So I think MMA fighters, they really could come from any branch, you know what I mean? But for me, I played a lot of other sports growing up, and I think that helped me train like a professional athlete to be a professional MMA fighter.
So I got to ask, what's it like to get punched in the face?
Obviously I try not to get punched in the face as much as possible. I do not like to get punched in the face. I feel like, which is probably not a good thing, but over time you kind of get used to it. You know what I mean? I don't even blink my eyes when I get punched in the face. I remember when I used to get punched, get rocked, you get this adrenaline feeling like, oh my God, what happened? I don't really get that too much. It's either I'm getting knocked out or I'm just okay. So it's not the best feeling, but I try to avoid it. I try to be smarter because concussions, you're hearing all these things about concussions this day and age, and I try to only do my hard sparring only when I need to for my fights. I used to, when I was a kid, I used to just, let's go spar. It's fun. I love it. You know what I mean? Not anymore. I try to be smart about what I do.
Well, when it comes to the preparing for a fight, now what's your record as a pro since you've gone pro?
I am 5-1.
5-1. And
yep.
That's wildly impressive. So if you were an NFL team with that winning record, you'd be amazing, right?
6th and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us today. Pleased to be joined by Armando Salguero, OutKick.com senior NFL writer. Armando, good to see you. Hope things are well. We haven't chatted with you since Arizona. Been a while.
Yeah, since I was sniffling all over everybody in Arizona. Yeah, it was great. It was a wonderful time.
It's
post-nasal drip.
Here's what I've learned about the Super Bowl, Armando, and I know you know this, having been to more than me. It's a petri dish. Every year, especially when you're on Radio Row, you're in a windowless room for a week. And I think 80 to 90% of the people, Clay Travis is another one who came back completely ill for a week from the Super Bowl, comes back with some sort of contagious disease when they go cover the Super Bowl. I'm guessing 90% of people.
Oh, no, there's no doubt about it. And to be very perfectly honest, I went to Arizona with stuff because, remember, I spent 4 weeks going back and forth to Buffalo and then another week going to Kansas City, and it's not warm there. And I'm a warm person. Aside from my heart being warm, I like warm, And so it was a challenge, but I'm over it, and we're plowing ahead.
Do you think we will learn something new about Aaron Rodgers and the Packers within the next 2 weeks? Or is it just because the combine's going on, it'll be end of March before we get there? Because he's emerged from the darkness retreat, and he told the media at the end of the season he didn't want this to be a long process. With that in mind, what's the timetable here? Because Carr's taking his time. Rodgers could too, I guess.
I was told this week. And so the emergence from the retreat, I was going to say from the darkness,
yes,
supposedly happened on Wednesday. So that kind of fell in line with the timetable I was told. If he were to pivot to telling the Green Bay Packers where he's at, I don't know if he has in fact pivoted to doing that. And even if he does and has, if the answer is anything other than I'm retiring, it's going to take some talking through, because first of all, we have to understand whether the Green Bay Packers want him back. It's not just a one-sided situation. My guess is that they will, because he's still pretty good. But if they don't, then the talks have to involve where and with whom next. And so that can get a little involved, and that could take longer.
Everyone's connecting the Jets. The Jets have been reported to have already contacted the Packers about this, and everyone's pointing to Vegas because of Devontae Adams, because of Josh McDaniels. But I'm intrigued from that storyline from this perspective. We know it's not going to be Derek Carr. He's the number 2 quarterback right now in the market. Number 1 would be Rodgers if he's traded. If it's not Rodgers or Carr, what does Josh McDaniels do with the expectations that are on him and that organization now to win, and the fact that he's on his second coaching stint and it didn't go well a year ago?
Yeah, so Josh McDaniels, his answer, since it's not Carr and if it's not Aaron Rodgers, is one of 2 things. Number 1, it would be Jimmy Garoppolo, with whom he is familiar from their time at New England. And the second option is, oh no, things are bad. So that's his second option.
So
he's screwed, is what Armando's saying.
Yeah, that was a. Thanks for translating. That was terrific. LaShawn McCoy and his comments about Eric Bieniemy. Is this sour grapes from LaShawn McCoy, or is this something that's really out there with players that have played under Eric Bieniemy? I know others stepped to his defense, but that McCoy essentially is arguing he has nothing to do with the passing game. It's all Andy Reid, and that's the reason he wasn't getting a head coaching opportunity, but now he can go earn it with the Commanders.
He definitely can go earn it with the Commanders if they find a quarterback that is anywhere near as good as Patrick Mahomes. Good luck with that. There is some truth to what McCoy is saying, but I don't think it's a thought or a feeling that is predominant out there. I don't think that any sort of large percentage of the players who have played for Eric Bieniemy feel the dislike for Bieniemy that McCoy feels. McCoy obviously had a bad experience in Kansas City. He was at the end of his career or close to it. They didn't use him a whole lot. They realized that he was at the end of his career or close to it. And, Shady is a flavor not often enjoyed by everyone. And so Bieniemy, who is a no BS kind of guy, no frills kind of guy, they didn't exactly hit it off. Bieniemy is a former running back, and he expects running backs to do certain things, and it didn't happen with LaShawn McCoy at the end of his career, and now LaShawn is lashing out. One thing I would say to you, the idea that Eric Bieniemy was not hired as an NFL head coach only because he was in the shadow of Andy Reid for all those years, only because he wasn't always calling the plays. Well, Doug Peterson was in the same shadow, in the same situation, and was hired. Nagy was in the same shadow, the same situation, and is in the same shadow and same situation again, and was hired by the Chicago Bears. And so that's not the only reason that Eric Bieniemy has, interviewed with half the NFL and failed to get or land an NFL head coaching job with any of them.
I was talking with a former NFL head coach who said it was just an idea, but he was like, what happened last year in Tampa, he could see happening in Washington when new ownership takes over, whenever that is, sooner rather than later, where Rivera puts Bieniemy in that head coaching spot. He's already the assistant head coach. I was asking specifically about that title. And that would be an interesting situation where Rivera would move up in the organization to some role, and we would see Bieniemy as head coach. I'm not saying that's exactly what's happening here, but it is a scenario that could play out based on the structure that they're describing and what we saw with Arians, which was peculiar, but Arians was right there in the organization the entire season.
That's possible, I suppose. Let me tell you what's more likely, okay? What's more likely is unless the Washington Commanders, under this ownership or any other, find a quarterback that can be and show to be elite, the only way that Eric Bieniemy becomes a head coach is if he is the interim head coach in a season where the Commanders are not doing well and Rivera gets fired before the end of the season and Bieniemy takes over. That's the more likely scenario, barring an elite quarterback, because barring an elite quarterback, that is a middling to below average team, and there is no great coaching by Eric Bieniemy or anybody else who's going to change that.
The staff that we are seeing Sean Payton put together in Denver, Vance Joseph is now the defensive coordinator. He's back with the organization that he was the head coach for in 2017 and 18. They've just announced they're hiring Greg Minuski as their inside linebackers coach, for instance. There are a lot of veteran coaches that want to coach with Sean Payton with the opportunity of moving up the ranks as well. It's not the same that we're seeing with the young head coaches like Steichen and like Jonathan Gannon in Arizona. Payton's drawing attention by the guys who have been there and done that. They want to work with the veteran who's been there and done that. It gets intriguing because they're specifically with the two guys I'm mentioning, Joseph and even with Minuski at inside linebacker, they are stacked on defense and personnel. They're going to have success, and these are the names that we'll be hearing about in the next hiring cycle.
Right, and oh, by the way, what does that say about the Arizona Cardinals? Because they saw Sean Payton and decided we don't want to give up, multiple first-round picks for Sean Payton or any first round. Well, that was the price, man. Why'd you interview him if that's,
You're right.
Why are you wasting people's time? Part of that from owner Michael Bidwell is kind of a pushback to the idea that they have a quarterback that elite head coach candidates didn't want to coach, right? in Kyler Murray. So I think there's a little bit of that involved. But I have to tell you, there are people in the NFL who are just talent magnets, okay? Tom Brady, when he went to Tampa Bay, what happened? Everybody wanted to play for Tampa Bay all of a sudden. Gronk comes out of retirement. Richard Sherman shows up. A bunch of other guys. It was one of those. They find a running back who was in free agency in Fournette, and he signs with the Bucks. It's the same thing with coaches. Guys see coaches that have done it, that have a reputation, that have pelts on the wall, so to speak.
Yep.
And they're thinking, that guy can get me a ring. Let me go there. And you're going to see it with other assistants, and you're going to see it with players as well, if and when the Broncos decide to dip into free agency.
Armando, the Titans are one of those teams over the salary cap that need to get under the salary cap. Yesterday, they made some moves to get under that cap with Rand Carthon as their new GM. Taylor Lewan, Robert Woods, Zach Cunningham, Randy Bullock, all cut. My question about Rand Carthon and this Titans team right now is, with most teams in the league, we can specifically say, okay, this is the goal right now. They're either getting rid of a lot to try to rebuild, or they're on their way up, or they're in the last part of the window, or whatever it is. I'm not sure I know what the Titans are right now and what Rand Carthon is going to try to do with this team. When you look at what they have and what they have to do right now, what spot are they in within that division especially?
Their window is closing, Chad. It's pretty obvious that, look, they have a decision to make with Ryan Tannehill. My guess is the decision will be, Tom Brady's not coming, and probably Derek Carr is not coming, and we got Jimmy Garoppolo is probably going elsewhere. And plus, he's not that much better, if at all better, than Ryan Tannehill. So where are we? They have that decision, and my guess it will be that he will be with the Titans at a different cap number, I hope, for their sake, but he will be with the Titans. And then what do you got? You got a team that 4 years ago in 2019 went to the AFC Championship game. 2 years ago was the number one seed in the AFC, but proved themselves incapable of advancing to the big game in the playoffs because their quarterback was not capable of helping them to get there. And their best offensive weapon is the running back, who has taken countless hits, granted, also, dealt out countless hits, but those add up after a while. Is he going to get healthier, stronger, faster, or is it going in the other way eventually? So this is a roster that doesn't feel young, doesn't feel like it's, trending upwards. Maybe Vrabel, who is one of the best coaches in the NFL right now, maybe he gets out of them stuff that they don't even know that they're capable of giving, and I don't think they're going to give. But, they're in the AFC, and there's like 6 better teams with better quarterbacks than them. Not in their division, and maybe in their division now. But, it's not an arrow-up team in my estimation.
I think they're one of the more unpredictable teams of the entire offseason, both in free agency and the draft. I think there's a scenario where Tannehill's back and they draft a quarterback high, similar to what Kansas City did with Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes, trying to do both things, play for the here and now and then build for the future. But we don't know. I think the only certainty is that they want Jeffrey Simmons under a massive contract moving forward. They got to have him back. Other than that, I don't know what could happen at any position here.
And also, what are we looking for? Because the Tennessee Titans are going to be fine in the regular season. They're going to be competitive. They're going to be good even. It's going to be fine. But if you're looking for championships, if you're looking for postseason, rallies, I don't think that team is one of those that you expect that from.
No, I'm with you. Absolutely. So another unpredictable team, not because of, they're very solid. They are consistent, the Baltimore Ravens. But we don't know about what's going on with Lamar Jackson, who's representing himself and has dug in on this contract negotiation now for more than a year. Armando, we're going to find out a lot, I think, based on the franchise tag that's going to be handed down. Non-exclusive or exclusive. Non-exclusive, a team could offer Lamar Jackson terms, and then if signed, the Baltimore Ravens get 2 first-round picks in return from said team. If they go with the exclusive tag, they're paying Lamar Jackson $45 million guaranteed next season, and it's a rinse and repeat. I'm curious which way you think they go on the tag.
Well, before I tell you, why aren't the Baltimore Ravens calling the Chicago Bears and saying, we'll give you Lamar Jackson for the first overall pick, and now we've got Bryce Young? Why aren't they doing that?
If you believe that you will get an offer sheet signed by another team for 2 first-round picks, I would go that route with the non-exclusive tag. And if you don't get it, you still have Lamar Jackson back playing as long as he's healthy. He's shown us that he's going to continue to play on guaranteed money year by year.
He's also shown us the last couple of years that he's now got durability problems because he's failed to finish both of the last 2 years when the team needed him most to make a playoff run. All I'm saying is that sometimes teams get locked into what they know and what they think they love without looking over the horizon a little bit. And I just would suggest to the Baltimore Ravens to look over the horizon because Lamar Jackson is not going to get cheaper and he's not going to get younger. And I know he's young and I know, right now he's relatively cheap, but if you have a certain thought about Bryce Young, then go get Bryce Young because now you have the wherewithal perhaps to do that. Maybe the Chicago Bears are in love with Justin Fields and don't want to do that, but my guess is they would upgrade to Lamar Jackson over Justin Fields. Now, as far as the franchise tag, it has to be an exclusive tag. That's $45 million, isn't it? It's $45 million.
Yes.
You're done for the offseason. It's over because it all plops down on your salary cap unless and until you sign Lamar Jackson to a long-term deal. It means no free agency. You're going to have to, trim some fat, some salary cap fat to even draft and sign the draft picks. It's a rough go of it if they really want to go that direction, but they might have to because barring that, somebody might just step out.
Yeah, and it sounds like they were going in that direction in the postseason presser that they held, where DaCosta and Harbaugh both dug in on the fact that they want him back. 200% chance he's back. The only way to do that is with that $45 million tag. That's the 200% guarantee. But we still don't know about Lamar Jackson. He doesn't speak about this, and he's representing himself, so who knows?
By the way, going back to the Chicago Bears, who have the first overall pick, they also have $99 million in salary cap space. They can do anything that they want and some things that other teams want. They can do anything this offseason. This is the offseason that will define their next, I would say, 5 to 7 years.
Atlanta's the other team I would watch out for with Lamar. If it's the non-exclusive tag, I think they would be aggressive, only because they were aggressive with Deshaun Watson. So we know they were willing to pony up to a certain level, not the fully guaranteed deal, but a certain level of money. And there are only a handful of teams willing to do that. Atlanta and Chicago make sense based on the system that's in place, though. You're right. I'm fascinated by it because I think there could be movement there this year. because Lamar Jackson's going to want it, not Baltimore. Hey,
that's fair.
Combine next week. Bryce Young, we know C.J. Stroud. I said earlier this week, Will Levis is going to look like $1 million at the shorts and T-shirt competition that is the NFL Combine, because no one's really concerned about his height, weight, or speed.
That's fair, but unfortunately, there's tape.
I know. Apparently, Mel Kiper hasn't watched it.
He's just looking at his biceps, and he thinks, man, this guy's got what it takes to be an NFL quarterback. Yeah, that's all it takes.
Franchise guy, no doubt. Armando. Yeah, go ahead.
No, true story. So one year when I was covering the Dolphins, Jimmy Johnson traded for Jim Druckenmiller. And on his first pass of a practice, Jim Druckenmiller threw a 70-yard pass on the money, in stride, 70 yards. And then they stopped practicing against air and started practicing against real human beings. And, it didn't look quite the same.
I know. But there's always that team that just falls in love with this athletic ability.
Well, I'm seeing Anthony Richardson now as the number 1 overall pick. Also, someone trading up to get him. I saw that as a story yesterday. So get ready, Armando. We'll see all the stories now come out of nowhere about the quarterback that's going to rise.
Armando will have them.
Yep.
OutKick.com. Always appreciate Armando. Great conversation as usual.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Armando Salguero. OutKick is where you can find his work, and just follow him on social by his name. He's got it simple, easy. Armando Salguero. Coming up, the Panthers have brought back one of their former coaches, and Don Capers, who's helping out the organization. And, man, it's hope he doesn't have social like Armando does, like we do.
Hope he doesn't read his mentions.
There's a hairpiece.
If he does have
There's a hairpiece that the responses have been brutal. We'll also check out the responses to one of Clay's polls from earlier today on his social accounts. This is OutKick 360.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
So the higher that number can be, the better you are with the committee. It's really that simple.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really got to lean into the turns.
He's got incredible taste in which media figures he listens to.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
Why are we going through Melania's goods? Don't make Brittany Griner out to be some type freedom fighter. Shouldn't there be a little bit of common sense? Let's roll them, big boy. What do you got?
They want to find someone to be the face of domestic terrorism, and they want it to be a right-wing Trump supporter. Don't let them entrap you into doing something dumb. But they were hyper-rational. They looked at the data, and they said it makes no sense for me to submit to this COVID shot mandate.
Get the shot or you can't go to your brother's wedding. Get the shot or you can't go to your daughter's graduation. Get the shot or else.
Bobby Carpenter talks college football and more with us in less than 10 minutes. OutKick 360 rolls on. Hutton and Withrow with you. Clay Travis put the poll up earlier today, over 10,000 responses, votes. And here's the poll. Based on the undisputed fact that Brandon Miller transported a gun to the crime scene that was used to murder a woman in Tuscaloosa, should Miller be playing for Alabama? 83% no, 17% yes.
And that is now, I'm looking at the most updated figure. There's 28,858 people who have now voted in this poll. Right around there, 82% and 18%. So it's clicked up 1% on yes, he should be playing. 82%.
No, he should not be playing.
Say no. Yeah, I think the difficulty people are having with this story is everyone wants to go to the you act like you know all the facts, but those in law enforcement that know the facts didn't charge him with a crime. There's two separate things here. Saying that he should be suspended is not the same as saying he should go to jail. They're two different things under the law. It's about what the university should have done and what the program should have done, and not necessarily what law enforcement should do. And if you buy the lawyer's statement wholeheartedly, I can understand someone saying, well, it's just a really bad circumstance and nothing should have happened. But people are suspended from teams or from work or kicked out of off a team or fired from work for far, far less than what we're talking about here with Brandon Miller.
For poor decisions.
Yeah, this is a poor decision at best.
Right.
To get the text and still show up when someone's asking for the gun to be back to them. Apparently Alabama just now figured out on Tuesday, according to what Greg Burns said. So,
that's what. So
again, there's
those
different
with
things
you don't
here.
know all the facts. Guess who has admitted he didn't know all the facts? Greg Burns.
Yeah. But again, there's different things that we're talking about here. So the way Clay worded it is right. People are like, that's too strong. No.
Undisputed.
No one is disputing, even Brandon Miller's attorney is not disputing that the murder weapon was in his vehicle and he physically transported the murder weapon to the crime scene that was used to kill the young mother. That's what happened. Now, you can take it as, are you guys going to apologize because Brandon Miller's lawyer said that? No, because it doesn't change the facts of the case. You can choose to believe Brandon Miller's lawyer wholeheartedly. You can ask questions about his knowledge in it and believe whether or not that statement is completely true or not. Again, I've never said the guy should go to jail or face charges.
Right. And
I said he should not have the privilege of playing basketball at Alabama, and he should not be a part of one shining moment after a young mother lost her life with a weapon that he transported to the crime scene. Pretty simple. Very black and white for me on this as to what Alabama should have done, but instead they've done nothing. And Greg Burns' comments, Hutton, really just cloud everything even more.
Panthers former head coach Dom Capers, he's got quite the hairpiece. Speaking to the media, and it's caused quite the viral firestorm with the piece that he's wearing, and some of the responses have been outstanding. Nick Carpenter, I mean, look at this thing. Dom Capers looks like the unmasked villain saying, I was going to get away with it too. If it wasn't for you meddling kids.
It looks like the villain in Despicable Me with the hairstyle even. Who thinks this is good? Like, if your hair's going white and you're an older guy, like,
compared
just
to Carlos
white.
Boozer, which is a classic look
That's
by
also
Boozer.
very good. Yeah, the comb down.
Yes.
Is how I describe this. Like
painted
comb it
on
straight
versus glued on.
This is a bad look for Dom Capers. Look, you don't need to go jet black with your hair. Just let it go white. If you're an older gentleman, just let it go white. That's my advice.
In a mirror, how can that look good? Don't know. But Dom says, you know what?
Some 30-year-old told him it looks good. That's what happened.
Makes me look big time.
Some 30-year-old said, you look great. You look hot.
Bobby
Dom.
Carpenter next on OutKick 360.
Great hair.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking there's going to be practice the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all of this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine. But you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Just like that, the final hour is here for our Thursday edition. OutKick 360, Hutton and Withrow with you. 6th and Peabody, our location. Headlines coming up. Right now, we kick off the hour. Bobby Carpenter joins us, SiriusXM college football analyst. Joins us weekly. Bobby, good to see you, man.
Hey, great to see you guys.
NFL Combine next week. What do you remember about yours?
Oh, goodness. Well, anybody that's been in there, and I guess, it's even outside like the media, and they've changed it up. They used to always have it at the train station. I think it is still there, and I don't know if they've renovated the hotel. But one of the more memorable aspects of it is the rooms are all around looking at like a courtyard inside. They've got a pool in the middle. And so it's basically like akin to speed dating. I get there at the beginning of the week. I was hurt, so I couldn't play in the Senior Bowl. And they give you your schedule from basically 8 to 11, and they have 20-minute blocks, I believe. So there's 3 blocks an hour. where teams get to meet with you, and they have some sort of like high level logistics scheduling this thing. Because there's an opportunity, I think, whatever you have so many a day. I ended up meeting with like 26 of the 32 teams. And I think I basically had blocks filled out almost every one of them. I mean, one day I think I had one or two off. You're filled. So you literally go into a room, you meet with the team, they give you a bag, they give you some gear. Sometimes you watch some film, they ask you a variety of questions. Sometimes they'll get you on the board. Sometimes they try to make you uncomfortable. Sometimes it may just be a position coach and maybe a coordinator. Other times it's like head coach, trainer, maybe owner, maybe GM, ton of scouts. Some of them videotape it, some of them don't. I mean, it's a wide variety of what you're going to get. And then as soon as it's done, it's like horn goes off. They come and kind of shepherd you out. And another team is there, if you have another meeting, waiting to take you to that next one. So you're kind of like saying, bye, it's the Raiders. See you. Hey, the Redskins are taking you to this next one, and they've got their, low-level scout who's going to kind of shepherd you to their deal in the next 20 minutes. So I'll never forget, they tell you to dress appropriately. Like it's a business interview. So I brought like sport coats, I think, and like maybe a suit to wear, and dress for the job. And so I got dressed up, and there was a guy there who I can't even remember what his name was for the love of me, but he was walking out. Like I said, there's a big pool in the middle, and it's like a big circle, and they all face it. And he's like walking and talking to the room that he just left, thinking he's walking somewhere else, and just everyone just freezing as he walks straight into the pool, like head over the shoulder, and goes down. Dude's all suited up. He's got his bags on. And it was like early in the night. It starts at 8, it goes to 11. It was like the 8:40 block. It wasn't even 9 yet. And I'm like, you got to go to your next interview soaking wet in a suit that has to be miserable. And like that image will forever be burned into my mind because he was only like 2 rooms down. So I got a nice crisp view of him falling in the pool.
Scenarios are different, but are they pretty much asking you the same questions at every stop?
It depends. Like, it depends on how well they know you. And my situation was a little unique. I mean, my dad played in the NFL. And so there was a number of coaches that had either played with him or had coached him before, or, knew him pretty well. And so some of those guys obviously knew me. I had some friends like Mike Vrabel was with the Patriots at the time. Belichick's the coach. And so I go in there, like Pioli, all those guys, they knew everything about me to start out. And so they're like making jokes about some of the stuff that other teams like asking serious questions on, like character concerns, because, I used to mess around and, college meetings, you get boring, these stinking compliance meetings, which like they don't even have anymore because there's no rules.
Right.
But you sit there in camp and 2 hours they ask you to sign, 10 pieces of paper, 15 pieces of paper, basically all asking in a way, do you gamble on sports? Are you tied into gamblers? Do you take money? Like, if you say check yes, then like fill out the paper and like then we have to talk, or everyone just checks no and you go on. And so these meetings were arduous. My senior year, I would draw little phallic symbols on it and just mess around with it. You have to turn those in the NCAA. And so it kind of became a thing. I had to go meet with the AD again. And why do you do this? You have a problem. It was a mess. It's like there were teams like legitimately read the Cincinnati Bengals. And this is why I always think this organization is incredibly dysfunctional. I mean, I was a business major, economics major at Ohio State. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I do okay. I mean, I'd never been arrested, never really gotten in any type of trouble. I was National Honor Society in high school, played a bunch of sports. I kind of like have two-parent household. Like there's a lot of things that are very positive about me. And for some reason, the Bengals, it was like close to home, so they knew about that. They red flagged me as a character concern. And my agent's like, what is this for? And I told him, he goes, are you serious? I'm like, he goes, they drafted Chris Henry and like Pac-Man Jones and dudes like that. And he's like, they're going to red flag you. I'm like, I don't know. That's just kind of how it was. So they ask different questions. Some of the things go around, and there's teams that really grill you, especially if they think you have a short fuse or there are some character issues. And everybody gets upset about it. I remember, the Des Bryant situation where, they talked about his mom and basically insinuating, was she a prostitute and different things. And, is that out of bounds? Maybe, probably. Like, you're going to give a young man, $15 to $20 million, and you're going to put a draft capital in on him and, expect him to, handle your franchise. And everybody gets so offended by those questions. And I'm like, I understand they might be out of bounds. There's a good chance there are. No other line of work would you have those questions be asked. However, the people that get offended about it are the same people that I'd look up in the stands that like basically had an FBI dossier on players, and they're sitting there bringing up things about your mom, saying terrible stuff, racial things, all kinds of stuff that's yelled down at players. And I tell people that's the reason why the GMs have to ask these questions, because they can't have you turning during a game and yelling back at fans just because they hit a personal nerve and maybe you just had dropped a pass or missed a tackle. Like, so they have to make sure that you're psychologically able to handle that and you're not going to go into full meltdown mode. And so is it fair to ask them? No. But the same people who complain about the questions being asked are the reason why those questions have to be asked in the first place.
Similar psych eval to what you had to go through after drawing the phallic symbols on the notebook that you were forced to go through, I'm sure, after that happened. Bobby Carpenter, our guest on OutKick 360. Bobby, you talked about a two-parent household, and it reminded me of Deion Sanders' comments with Rich Eisen, where he was going through different positional things he's looking for at Colorado, and he said, with quarterback, I'm looking for two-parent households, GPA over 3.5, all these other things. And then kind of joked, but not really. He said, the defensive lineman, I'm looking for the exact opposite. I'm looking for someone who's been in trouble. I'm looking for someone from a single-parent household. And, everyone kind of laughed. Coach Prime can get away with saying those things. I know and we know these are things coaches have said for a long time, but most probably wouldn't say them in public. How prevalent is that, though, in terms of positional awareness and what type of person you're looking for at different positions in football at the college level?
Well, I think your quarterback, obviously that guy's a leader, so you want to make sure he checks all those boxes. And by the way, when I went into the Patriots, they asked me to go up and draw some of the pictures on the board that, hey, what do you want me, like our defense? Like, no, draw some of the stuff that I heard your artistic work, from the papers. Scott Pioli said, I'm like, you got to be kidding me, man. He goes, no. He goes, I'm really entertained by this. I thought it was like
amazing.
A joke. Like they're going to kill me. Yeah, look how terrible, man.
We're looking at Bobby's combine picture right here.
Yeah. Fit 255, nice and heavy. But I will say this, because this goes into like recruiting when you talk about colleges. It's the same thing. Like, especially at quarterback, you're going to need a certain type of guy. My agent told me, he goes, don't score too well on the Wonderlic. He goes, try to be in the 20s, low 30s if possible. He's like, you don't need to be out there getting, 40 on the Wonderlic or 42, because they already think you're too smart and too much of a smart ass sometimes. So you don't want to enhance that. Just be in the box, like be at the high end, but be in the range, maybe just a little outside. Don't be an outlier. But I don't know if you necessarily need guys who are, from the street or this and that, but you do need guys that have an edge. And sometimes that comes from a very, very difficult upbringing. And what's amazing, guys, and this is what's awesome about football, is you have probably the most diverse workforce you're going to find as far as geography, urban, suburban, rural, different regions of the country, as far as the mix of mostly people that are American, and it's mostly black and white players, but you don't have a lot of foreign players. But as far as America, I mean, it makes up a pretty impressive subsection of the country at large. And you need guys that have an edge. And what's remarkable is I played with dudes who came from great families, who are as tough and as hard as you would ever find. I played with dudes who you had said came from some of the worst backgrounds in the world, and had probably had a gun held to their head, and they were soft and they would wilt under pressure, and everything in between. And so you would look at that and be like, man, this guy had a tough upbringing. He's going to be tough. Sometimes that's true, and sometimes it's not. You look at this guy, hey, he came from a nice two-parent home, lived in a $500,000 house, never has worked a day in his life, and that dude's the biggest grinder in the world and someone you would want with you back to back in an alley. And then you see the reverse of that happen too. So it's really more how the guy was raised and what inherent beliefs they have, and it's really, really tough to figure that out.
So Bobby Carpenter, football fan, is who I'm asking this question to right now. Aaron Rodgers is now out of his hole, and he's going to make a decision on what he wants to do next. What does Bobby Carpenter, football fan, want Aaron Rodgers to decide and want to happen with his next step for your football fandom?
I'm kind of torn with this because I don't necessarily want to see him play for anybody but the Packers. I think it's a great story where you can have somebody start their career at one place behind a legend. Legend leaves, he takes over, goes there, wins 3-4 MVPs. He's won a Super Bowl. It'd be great to see him stay there another couple of years and maybe they get back to the Super Bowl. Like, that would be tremendous. I would love to see that. However, I don't know if that's the likely scenario, and I would love to see him win. And probably the best place for Aaron Rodgers to ultimately win is not going to be in Green Bay. And it's going to depend on the draft capital and everything that comes back, how his contract looks. But, man, I think there's a great opportunity for him with the Jets. I love it. Like, with what he'd be able to do. And I don't know if it feels a little too Brett Favre-ish, given the fact that that's where he went. But they're set up to win. Like, I think Indianapolis has a pretty darn good team outside of the quarterback position. There's two places right there. The problem is you're going to the AFC. If he really wanted to do it, he'd probably have to take a massive pay cut. Like the New Orleans Saints, with the weapons they have and the defense they have and the division they're in, they'd probably win 13 or 14 games and probably be the 1 seed, given the fact that Tampa was able to win the division last year, right at 500. So that would probably be it, but he would have to make major concessions in his contract if he wants to win. But I want to watch Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs one or two more times at least, making a run.
Bobby Carpenter, our guest. Bobby, former Ohio State quarterback C.J. Stroud now, he said that fans would come up with creative ways to talk trash to him or to try to motivate him or let him know how they felt about his play. He doesn't have social media, so they would get on Venmo and then send him a very small amount and then comment what they thought about his play. Even Buckeyes fans doing it, saying, hey, pick up your game. You were awful in the second half against Michigan. More choice and colorful words, I'm sure. Were there creative ways that you would hear fans talk trash to you? Would they dare do that?
Well, it's pretty impressive. I grew up, Facebook came out my junior year, I think, and that was when you had to be in college and a university email.
Same.
Ohio State was one of the first 10 schools to have it. But you had to go to your desktop computer. Like, you couldn't just be idly sitting somewhere with your phone, and hop on. And so it takes little effort to do that now. And I would say we lost to Texas my senior year. We were up by 6. Should have probably won the game. We missed a field goal. We dropped a touchdown in the end zone late. A friend of mine, tight end Ryan Hamby, and it forever kind of changed his career, and the quarterback that threw it to him, Justin Zwick, because Zwick and Troy Smith, who end up winning a Heisman, are going back and forth. And if he completes that ball to Hamby in the end zone, he may end up being the starter, and who knows how the rest of the story goes. But I watched people, and it's a little bit like the Venmo, where you had to literally write. They sent mail to the facility like, I hope you die, you ruined my life, all these terrible things. Put postage on it, which was probably 40 cents at the time, like addressed it and sent it off. And I'm like, man, that takes a lot of effort. Like, that's just not you being drunk after a game and hopping on your phone and sending 25 cents or $1 or whatever. You had to take work and effort and address something, put it in a mailbox. And so people have always done this. Now that it's just so much easier because the vehicles we have to instantly access someone are much, much cleaner than U.S. mail, where you actually have to put some effort down and write something out and then probably not send it off till the next day, realizing that you shouldn't have done it at all.
Well, then you fans are getting even more creative. The student at Duke that catfished the guy at Louisville and then
showed the messages
on the DMs, printed it out on poster board, and then behind the goal was holding it up. I mean, that's classic. That's creative, and apparently it doesn't take that long to pull off.
Yeah, it's great. That's why I said I give people credit for that. A lot of respect for them putting the time, energy, and effort into doing that. But then again, I go back to the combine. That's also why we have to ask these questions to make sure that somebody doesn't run our test that situation and walk up in there and grab the poster board, slam it over their head, and punch them in the face. Like, that's the issue.
Check out Bobby on Channel 84, Sirius XM, and, of course, on social at BCarp3. Always enjoy this, man. Thank you for the time. As always, hope the workouts are going well for the kids, and we'll catch up soon.
They're going great, guys. Combine week next week. I mean, hope springs eternal if your team was, not great last year. And that's what the NFL always loves selling this time of year, is a big bag of hope in the draft.
We also found out today that Bobby was essentially Jonah Hill's character in Superbad with what he was drawing on his notebook. Bobby, thanks, man.
I will say more abstract sketches, guys.
Not as
quite
specific.
that
Not as specific. Right, I got you.
If I would have seen a headshot from the media program throughout your career, and I saw that one, I'd be like, that's the only one that doesn't look like a first-round pick to me. Maybe second, though.
Thank you.
Maybe second.
All
right. Always the first one here. Thank you, man. Appreciate you as always. Bobby will join us again next week. Great as usual. Great perspective. Great storyteller, too.
Oh, yeah.
Behind the scenes. Hey, the LIV Tour,
Mm-hmm.
the golfers there, one of the bigger storylines going into 2023 with the major championships, would the best golfers in the world be able to participate if they were part of the LIV Tour? That is, in fact, going to happen. We knew Augusta National was going to allow them to play. And that is the case for the other three majors as well. We are, the PGA Championship is in question. However, their bylaws will allow them to play. And that is intriguing as we progress down the road. But we're going to see them at the British Open. We will see them at Augusta coming up in, a month? A month and a half. Can't wait.
But how quickly will that go away when they're not allowed to participate in any other tour events and not getting points on tour?
Well,
because a lot of this is holding over, I think, right, in terms of ranking.
Sure, yeah,
where they're qualified.
Yeah, the world rankings, but in your PGA Tour card and all that. Will
this be the last year that happens? Will it be another year after this?
There is a way that you can earn points on the Asia Tour as a professional golfer. That will earn you points. And, of the 8 events or however many they're adding now to the LIV Tour moving forward, because they are adding some more events this year, you can earn points elsewhere on the Asia Tour, hypothetically, if they wanted to. Eventually, though, if the goal is to have the best golfers in the world compete in the majors, and that's what Augusta can allow, or anyone else that's not under the PGA purview, we will see the PGA come to bat too. I think at some point there will be some type of merger, some type of truce, some type of agreement where I think we will see both brands have the ability to play in these tournaments. Not necessarily a LIV event, but the PGA at some point has got to figure out the money and disperse it properly, and then figure out, okay, how do we make sure that the guys who should be in these tournaments that would qualify had they not left, play. Not everyone is going to be top of mind, right? But as far as Brooks Koepka is concerned, and the report that he apparently wants to jump back in after restructuring his game last year in the LIV Tour, making $8 million, by the way, to do it, and $100 million reportedly to jump ship and join them. From the U.S. Open to the RNA, who's approved it for the Open, to Augusta National, and now the PGA of America coming to the decision that you've got the opportunity to play in these majors. If you could play in the majors, shouldn't you be able to play in the Waste Management Open, for instance?
Look, I'd love to see these guys that are stars play wherever, because I like to watch stars and I like to watch golf. So I want to see them in as many tournaments as possible. But I would also ask the question, when will the PGA Tour really be compelled to merge in any way with the LIV Tour? It's not affecting them right now at all. Now, when Tiger Woods is officially done, and that brings down viewership some more, which helped the Genesis Invitational this weekend, when Rory McIlroy's not playing in as many tournaments, 4 or 5 years from now, does it get to a point where, or, just another big player, Greg Norman's talking about meeting with a major champion from last year in his home, about joining the LIV Tour. If a couple more big names jump ship to the LIV Tour, does that push them, compel them to merge in some way with the LIV Tour to let guys play on the PGA Tour also? I don't think we're to the point yet where PGA has to do any business with the LIV Tour. I do think we'll eventually get there. I just don't think we're there right now, because I don't see how it's truly hurting their bottom line, their business yet. Will it? The LIV Tour's already gotten more big names than I thought they would in the first year. If it continues, then I think, you're going to see a merger.
Well, and where my perspective is, I'm tuned in to the 4 major championships. And if both tours are represented there, I'm a happy casual golf fan there. I'm the casual golf fan for a tournament that includes Tiger Woods. I don't need anyone else that's playing in that tournament if he's making the cut, quite frankly. That's the story for me. It was the story last week. I was more concerned with Tiger Woods, who was 16 shots off the lead, than John Rahm, who was running away with it at Riviera. Point being, I think the casual fan that's tuned in on the Sunday of the final round of Augusta National, or who's going to win the U.S. Open, or who's going to win the British Open, what have you, they're going to be pleased here. And the question is, can the PGA grow stars and get your attention on the weekends where those guys aren't on the screen? And I think it'll be more of the same, honestly. So I don't know how much they actually lose, given the fact, I think both brands win here. And no one's really, it's not like I'm going to be able to find LIV Tour all that easy, right? It's not as simple as going to YouTube. You got to figure out where the CW is now.
Yeah, again, the LIV Tour is doing their thing and throwing ungodly amounts of money at players. But I don't think it's affected it yet. I think when Tiger Woods is done, when others are taken by the LIV Tour, it may compel the PGA to do something. PGA's fine right now. You know, they can stay mad at the LIV Tour. They can stay mad at the guys who left and do whatever they want. Whether we agree with it or not, whether we want to see Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson in as many tour events as they can compete in and doing that, that's what I want to see as a fan. But PGA can stay mad all they want until it affects their business. It hasn't affected their business yet. It might very soon, but not yet.
Two stories involving big business when we return. The Orioles and the fact that apparently they're more concerned with booking concerts and selling concerts than they are the baseball product at Camden Yards. And Sports Illustrated, SI, going to use artificial intelligence instead of humans to write pieces for their site. They're not going all in there, but they will be using the same technology we will. We will write for Sports Illustrated when we return on OutKick 360.
So can you explain to the viewers who might not know anything about MMA, and I got to be honest with you, I'm a casual UFC fan. I watch the big cards, but I'm not an expert in the nitty-gritty. Like, what is the traditional path for, like, an MMA guy if he's chasing to get to the top of that world? Like, what's that look like? We know what it looks like for football. We know what it looks like for basketball. How's that play out for an MMA fighter?
Well, I mean, that's the big difference between MMA and like the traditional sports you're talking about. Like, you have the collegiate, you know, that line of going, and then in mixed martial arts, you don't really have, I mean, you have the wrestlers aspects, but being a good wrestler doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a great MMA fighter. So it really looks a lot different for everybody. I mean, I was a traditional martial artist as a kid growing up, and then I found MMA was big because when we were on the same age when I was in high school, that's when the UFC started, like Chuck Liddell and like, you know, all those guys started, like, you know, building the sport like crazy. And that's how I found it. I was just originally actually a hockey player. I played like competitive high school. I played junior hockey.
Oh, you played juniors? Where at?
Yep. I played on the East Coast in the EJ, East Coast Hockey League. So yeah. And not East Coast Professional Hockey League, but EJ was up in the north. It was good. It was good hockey. We played again. I mean, I see guys I played against that are in the NHL all the time, and you know, I went to a high school literally just for hockey. I went to a prep school for a little bit just for hockey, and that was like my initial, like, that's what kind of gave me that competitive athletic part of myself that I was definitely able to apply into the military, and I was definitely able to apply into fighting as well. So what happened is my senior year of high school, I was playing juniors. I decided that I wanted to come back to high school to play for my high school just because of, I don't know, girls and stuff or something. I don't know why I did it, but I came back to my high school. I came back to my high school hockey team. I played it. We were doing really good. It was a playoff game, and my first shift of the game was like big playoff game. I blew on my shoulder. I went to go hit a kid, blew on my shoulder. So my following year, I missed a lot of like the times we hit tryouts in the summer to play for the teams in the next winter for like good junior teams. And that's kind of when I picked up MMA because like I wasn't, you know what I mean? I kind of got more into MMA then. I was like, it just kind of gave me an outlet that wasn't, you know, I always put all my energy into hockey. Now this gave me a separate outlet, and it was MMA, and I got competitive into that, did that for 2 years, and then until I eventually joined the military. So I think MMA fighters, they really could come from any branch, you know what I mean? But like for me, I played a lot of other sports growing up, and I think that helped me train like a professional athlete to be a professional MMA fighter.
So I got to ask, what's it like to get punched in the face?
Obviously I try not to get punched in the face as much as possible. I do not like to get punched in the face. I feel like, which is probably not a good thing, but over time you kind of get used to it. You know what I mean? I don't even blink my eyes when I get punched in the face. I remember when I used to get punched, get rocked, you get like this adrenaline feeling, like, oh my God, what happened? I don't really get that too much. It's either I'm getting knocked out or I'm just okay. So it's not the best feeling, but I try to avoid it. You know, I try to be smarter because concussions, you know, you're hearing all these things about concussions this day and age, and I try to only do my hard sparring only when I need to for my fights. I used to, when I was a kid, I used to just, let's go spar. It's fun. I love it. You know what I mean? Not anymore. I try to be smart about what I do.
Well, when it comes to the preparing for a fight, now what's your record as a pro since you've gone pro?
I am 5-1.
5-1, and
yep.
That's wildly impressive. So if you were an NFL team with that winning record, you'd be amazing, right?
OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network. Coming up, we will write for Sports Illustrated.
This is unbelievable.
In 60 seconds or so. Write their article, I'm saying. Chad, a terrible story that happened, 30 minutes down the road from where we sit right now, a volleyball player out of Smyrna. Yeah, it
happened in St. Louis.
St. Louis, but she's from Smyrna, Tennessee. Lost her legs in a car accident. The car was driven by an unlicensed driver who was violating parole, who was out on bond. And there's a GoFundMe set up for her and more, but just an awful set of scenarios where he had violated the ankle bracelet multiple times. And for whatever reason, those that were supposed to be monitoring this either didn't have the information or weren't paying attention to it.
Yeah, the ankle bracelet monitoring, I don't know, how that works per se, but tragic, especially tragic. Look, whoever hit the girl and caused this injury in this accident, it was going to be tragic, but the circumstances surrounding who did it makes it even worse. Just really sad story.
Yeah, the guy, the 21-year-old who sped through the intersection and then hit the 16-year-old, Janae Edmondson, and just playing in a volleyball tournament. Thoughts out to her and the family. And, this is a spot where this guy's got to, if you're violating your bracelet situation, you're out on bond based on burglary or whatever it was, there needs to be a situation where a spot where he's back in behind bars and not doing this with the violations of the ankle monitor. Awful.
There's no more bond, right? Like if violating your parole or you being out on bond and having an ankle bracelet on and you've repeatedly violated that and you don't have a license and you drive a car and you hit someone, especially a young person that's in town for a volleyball tournament and injure them permanently this way, you're not in a situation to get bonded out anymore. That's the way this should work.
St. Louis Post-Dispatch reported he had violated his bond at least 7 times since February 1st. Again, thoughts with Janae Evanson and her family. So Sports Illustrated, they're going all in on artificial intelligence, AI. Chad, this is a sign of our times. We've seen the era. I can't wait until we get 20 years from now, and we'll see how we compare our conversation now to then. But we've seen the era of the local newspaper printing daily, right? In the 90s, growing up as sports fans, printed
we would
copies
read
of the paper
the sports
daily.
page. Starting out working, I was reading the sports page every day.
You would
constantly
have beat writers, plural, for teams, working multiple papers, competing against each other for the top story. You flip to the front page or the sports page to find the top story. Now you get it on your phone immediately, and the same person that's tweeting is also the same person that's writing, that's also the same person that's posted a video, and it's one guy doing everything.
Yep.
Or is it moving forward? Sports Illustrated is now going to use artificial intelligence through other companies to replace human writers. Story now at OutKick.com. Their publisher, the Arena Group, announced that it's turning to artificial intelligence to not just pitch stories, but actually produce articles. And this is not difficult to do. In fact, at dinner late last week, we spent probably an hour, me, family, and friends, just doing exactly this and how quick and simple it would be for like a college student to produce a paper. And one of them that they are going to lean on, the same type of technology, is ChatGPT, which is also known as OpenAI. This is the technology I was using on the phone. So I've set up the username and password. I gave it to Tyler and Brooke. And what we will do is write the recap story in 60 seconds. We'll pull it up right now. You go to the website, you'll sign in. We're just going to put in 500-word recap of Alabama versus South Carolina game last night and hit enter. And we'll see what happens.
This is from ChatGPT, and this is an app you downloaded, Hutton?
It's a website. It's a website.
It's a website you can go to and sign up for.
You can tell it to do pretty much anything. And as we hit enter, we should be able to just watch it produce the article here. So, and we've done this earlier today, and I'm not sure what's popping up there on the screen. But it does. You read it.
Yeah.
You read the stats from this.
No, it gave a full game recap. It started by saying, we are unable to write this what you have requested, a live article.
Of a live in-game performance.
But what we can do is give you the most recent game between Alabama and South Carolina, and it goes into a full game recap that was right around the 500 words that you threw out. And it gave players from the game, point totals, what happened at the end of the first half, what happened at the end of the game, what happened in overtime. It blows your mind when you see this happen in real time. And look, I'm one for...
So here's the article. It's popping up now live on the screen. I can't read it because it's too far away, but this is detailed information of last night's game.
The game between Alabama and South Carolina was a thrilling matchup between two teams looking to make a late-season push. And then it goes through details about the game. Again, we don't have someone in our production crew back here writing this in real time. This is just us typing this in and it printing this out on the screen.
And if you have, if they're working with this technology, this technology is just compiling information just like Google, but they're adding detail to it without much information needed. Copy, paste, post on the site. OutKick has 15 to 20 writers approximately, constantly producing stories on a daily basis. And SI, through the Arena Group, is opting to allow a bot, artificial intelligence, to do the writing for them. It's nuts to me. So, type in, guys, if you don't mind, type in a poem on OutKick's Clay Travis. And we'll find the detail that pops up from the poem and the rhyming, Chad.
I think also if you just give it a specific date, I bet if you went in and said, Super Bowl, February 12th, and put in the teams, then you would get back, pretty quickly an article that it would write for you.
Yeah.
But it blows my mind to see this.
It's writing the poem right now, by the way.
Here is what, we probably see some of this also. Here's what I want, though. I want more people working jobs and not more robots working jobs. Call me old-fashioned with this. We have a lot of people who don't work right now. I want to open up more opportunities for humans to do jobs and not present opportunities for less humans to do a job, especially when it comes to sports media. So I hate this. I hate this for Sports Illustrated. I want humans writing stories.
Now, what they're claiming is it's going to pull stories from the SI archives, but it's more than that. I mean, what we're doing can pull stuff from Sports Illustrated. It can pull stuff from OutKick, from FoxNews.com, from FoxSports.com. It's doing this the same way a Google would on a Google search, and instead of giving you a million different links to hit, it's compiling the information and writing the story for you. What would you have done if you had this in college?
I would have probably
we had cliff
my
notes.
tail off.
We had cliff notes.
Yeah, I would have.
That's it.
I would have partied even more and then gotten back and said, "Oh, I've got a book report due, or I've got a paper to write," and I would, say some words into my phone, even my, iPhone 7S over here, and it would have printed out a paper for me that would have been better probably than what I would have written. But again, I hate this on its face because I want more humans doing these jobs. I want more humans working in media. I want more humans creating things. I don't want robots and AI creating more and more because it puts us in a position where fewer and fewer people work and do jobs. I hate it. I hate this for Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
A once proud institution is now just writing the names of two teams and putting a date in, and artificial intelligence is writing the story for it. I hate it. I hate it so much.
And OpenAI. You can read about these chat bots and what they do for exams or pinning a speech for a congressman. It's now at OutKick.com right now through the piece from Mark Harris. Baltimore Orioles, Chad, my Orioles.
Your Orioles.
They're not
a lot of good news for your Orioles.
They're not
in
selling
recent months.
tickets to Camden Yards for a baseball game, so they're more concerned with selling tickets to concerts. That's the priority. Events over baseball. And in fact, you've got the ownership group that's saying it's not even their job to worry about how much they're spending on the roster.
Here's an idea. If you're the Baltimore Orioles, we had Kurt Schilling on yesterday.
They're roughly 500 last year.
He brought up the Orioles, said, "Hey, they're on the rise, right? They've got some good young players.
They'll trade them.
They did well. Absolutely, they will.
They'll trade them.
How about just field a better product, pay a little more, have a good farm system, don't deal your guys away, have a winning team, go over round 5. Let's go over 500. Let's get in the playoff push into September. Let's be relevant for longer in the season. Let's be good to our fans. Let's be good to our home market in Baltimore, the surrounding area. And let's see if we sell some more tickets. I don't know. Novel idea. I get it, right? You can worry about selling concert tickets all you want, but just spend the money and invest or try to win and don't get rid of all of your young talent and see if people come back to the ballpark. And maybe, just maybe, a very proud fan base historically will come back. Let's try that out for a change. Just change it up.
It's a baseball club that's saying that baseball is not the priority.
Yeah, just change it up.
John Angelos and all the details there where he's Orioles,
running the organization.
The low payroll. By the way, John's got a home here in the Nashville area. It says the 2022 team overachieved and then added, "It's not my job to predict payroll." And then he listed his priorities for the club, for Camden Yards, and baseball was down on the list, the product itself.
It's so sad because Camden Yards, when it was built, marked the return to old-time baseball parks in the downtown heart of a city. It was the crown jewel of Major League Baseball. It was Camden Yards that sparked all these other great downtown ballparks. Jacobs Field in Cleveland, PNC Park in Pittsburgh now. All these places that migrated to a more baseball-y park. And it looks great, and it's a better fan experience and all that. It was the Baltimore Orioles and Camden Yards that did that. And now we've got the owner saying, "I'm more concerned about a Spice Girls reunion coming to Camden Yards in June when the Orioles are on a West Coast swing than I am the Baltimore Orioles being good." Pathetic.
Yeah, it's more
Absolutely
about
pathetic.
generating just top dollar revenue on anything that could be in that facility than it is actually producing the product for which your team is named and competes against.
And as I say that, I'm kind of psyched to go to a Spice Girls reunion concert if that's actually happening.
What do you think you think it'd be better or worse?
Do they
Backstreet
need
Boys?
a reunion, or are they still together? I don't even know. Maybe they never went away, and I just didn't know about it. They just get together annually for a small tour?
No, we would know about that.
Will they hit Camden Yards? Hutton, with your connections with the Orioles, could we get Spice Girls tickets? The Orioles have a standing invite because Hutton years ago put it on the open market. He didn't have a Major League Baseball team.
Yeah.
And on our old radio show, you put it out there that you're a free agent.
No, I didn't.
You're on a radio show.
I wrote an individual letter
You
to all
wrote letters to everyone,
Yeah.
but I'm saying you put it out there to every team.
Yep.
And how many teams came back? 7?
8 of them responded to me.
And then some got more involved than others. The Orioles got really involved with trying to recruit you to be a fan.
Yeah, the Orioles tried to get me to move.
Which makes me like them. They're now my American League team simply because of the way they
offered
treated
to move
you.
me to Baltimore.
Well, they've offered every year to bring us up to a game that we could do the show basically from the dugout if we wanted to. I mean, look.
Center field, it
could
doesn't
we
matter.
get to a Spice Girls concert? Probably not based on Angelos' priorities. But could we do our show from the first base dugout for an Orioles game?
Yeah, as long as we bring Brooks and Dunn with us, bring Kix Brooks with us to put a concert on.
I mean, I think we should make this happen. We got the Nashville connections. We've got your connections to the Orioles. Let's go up there and do this. Never been to a game at Camden Yards. I've walked past the outfield where they have spots where balls have hit, home run balls, as you walk that path to go to, was it M&T Bank Stadium?
Yep.
Where the Ravens play. So I've gone through there, walked through that little corridor to get to the football stadium, but never seen a game from Camden Yards. We got to change that.
For the record, Manny Machado, this was the year before he was traded. He's crushing it. Chris Davis was actually hitting the baseball then. They had decent pitching. They had young talent. And then they traded everyone. Buck Showalter was out. They traded everyone. I still enjoy keeping up with it. They were actually very fun to watch last year. They won 80-plus games. But this is kind of the same scenario you see in, sales. You've got a sales team. And when you overachieve, when you go above and beyond what you're supposed to do, when you meet the mark, that's the new bar to reach for the following month. And so when I see John Angelo saying, well, this team, they shocked everyone, they overachieved. Now it's like, oh, we'll just go cheap again because we can just repeat this and we'll still be in playoff contention in August. That's what I hate.
It's also all about margins. You know, the cost of setting up a concert and what you get in profit is probably way more sustainable and profitable for the business owners. So they're really pushing that with their sales team. We're really looking into more concerts because we make more money off that, which kills me. But it's very much just a billionaire or super millionaire's mindset of they won't even waste time on doing something unless it's a 20x return on investment. And even if you're going to make a lot of money doing something, it's not worth their time if it's not X amount in doing
the
so.
Business of it.
I abide by if I'm going to make money off of it as opposing to not making money off not doing it, then I probably want to do the thing that makes money, right? But it's no, that doesn't make enough money. Even though you're creating revenue out of nowhere and making money for the company, it doesn't make enough money for us, so we want to go to things that make more. This is what Angelos is doing with the Orioles. You know, we're spending so much on the baseball team and we don't get enough ticket revenue, and based on the tickets we sell, it's only this much profit because the team and the valuation, and then he goes into the concert business and says, but if we get Brooks and Dunn here and we sell out half of Camden Yards for that even, we make 10x based on investment. Sad.
Guaranteed millions either way.
That's the truth of the business person. I just explained business to everyone on the show. By the way, that, ladies and gentlemen, is business at the highest levels.
Chad will explain cryptocurrency when we return.
Yes, I've got a full thesis prepared on cryptocurrency.
It takes that.
We'll get back into our AI discussion, and Hutton will explain artificial intelligence. That's on tomorrow's
I will have
OutKick
the bot
360.
write an essay on artificial intelligence.
And robotics. You'll also explain that.
Anything you want.
And tomorrow, Davey will explain Westworld, the series, to us also, speaking of robots. Start to finish, what exactly was going on. We'll have all of these things for you.
We'll try to explain OnlyFans and what this guy was doing with fake accounts.
I can explain OnlyFans in about 10 seconds.
That's next on OutKick 360.
welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
So the higher that number can be, the better you are with the committee. It's really that simple.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
He's got incredible taste in which media figures he listens to.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
Why are we going through Melania's goods? Don't make Brittany Griner out to be some type freedom fighter. Shouldn't there be a little bit of common sense? Let's roll them, big boy. What do you got?
They want to find someone to be the face of domestic terrorism, and they want it to be a right-wing Trump supporter. Don't let them entrap you into doing something dumb. But they were hyper-rational. They looked at the data, and they said it makes no sense for me to submit to this COVID shot mandate.
Get the shot or you can't go to your brother's wedding. Get the shot or you can't go to your daughter's graduation. Get the shot or else.
6th the Peabody, our location with EHOP Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hutton Withrow, wrapping up what's been a fun show. Chad, there's a guy who's admitted to subscribing to his mom's OnlyFans account using multiple accounts of his own. It was a secret until now. Yeah.
So, couple questions.
Go ahead.
One, is it to keep tabs on his mom because he just wants to know what she's up to, or is there a more deviant reason that he's subscribing to her OnlyFans account?
I mean, it sounds like one of those stepmom.
Yeah, like I mean, I
deals.
guess I might understand if it's like, oh well, mom is mom's at it again, and all my friends in high school are on her OnlyFans account. I better see what she's up to.
No, there was
to make sure she's not harming herself.
There's some
in any
account
way.
where you like can confess something that you've been holding secret, and this guy was just like, it just starts by saying, I've been subscribed to my mom's OnlyFans for the past 18 months. That tells me he's doing it for the wrong reason.
Does it have info on the mom,
This
the
isn't an
OnlyFans account,
investigation.
or is this just someone just saying it, not offering
I don't know
details?
if the link was provided here. Yeah.
I need to see the account now. We need to do further research.
Yeah.
Someone, hey, Maddie, you're on OnlyFans.
Maybe,
go ahead and follow this woman so we can do further research on what's happening.
Now, part of the
with this
excuse
account.
was the account was not followed by many people, and she was hard up for money, so he was trying to help the morale of the mother by having so many subscribers.
So he's...
But you would still have to log on and see the content, which is... who knows what it was?
But in doing that, so
why would it be a secret?
First off, that's kind of sweet that he wants his mom not to feel bad about herself.
It's very caring.
That he's got all these
Very
fake
loving
accounts
and
and
caring.
he's making sure that she feels loved and
Yes.
wanted by people on
Yeah,
OnlyFans.
very affectionate.
But in doing this, you're also encouraging your own mother to continue with her OnlyFans career, which seems self-defeating to me. So again, the only possible reason that I wouldn't completely mock this, if it's like, mom's on the junk again, and I've got to make sure she's not harming herself with what she's putting out on OnlyFans or hurting her career opportunities. So I got to check in from time to time to make sure that it's on the up and up so she doesn't hurt herself in some way. But I don't think that's what we're dealing with here.
No.
So
No, he claims
this brings up a whole lot of other issues.
He claims that he knows there are videos on there, but he doesn't say if he's watched them or not. I mean, I think the
Look,
implication is...
I'm a business expert, as we found out in the last segment.
Right.
I'm not a shrink. I'm not a psychiatrist. This person needs a psychiatrist, and I don't know that I can help them.
I do not, Chad, unfortunately, have an OnlyFans account that you can help boost subscribers to.
I do not have an OnlyFans account. Matt is going to get on it, on his account. He's
No,
going to let us know
no
about
TikTok
this
for
one.
me.
We're going to do a deep dive. We're going to find out. Maybe we'll get the son on the show and ask him what he's up to.
No,
You
the
want
mom.
with the mom?
Yeah. How does she feel about her son?
Do you feel loved? Do you feel seen? Excuse me, ma'am.
Wow.
Do you feel seen by your son now, finally?
Chances are, if you're on the site, you don't care, though, right?
Are you both heard and seen on this OnlyFans account?
Back at it tomorrow, 3 o'clock Eastern, OutKick 360 across the OutKick Network.